Hi there, and welcome to another episode of TheInEVitable. This is MotorTrend's podcast about the future of the automobile. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? I'm Johnny Lieberman. This is Ed Lowe.
Hello there.
We host the program, and today we have a guest who should probably just have his own TED Talk, but
Yes.
Ed will explain.
Yeah, so this is a frenemy of mine, John Naderi. I'm wearing actually the sweatshirt with the logo from Super Street. This is a long time ago. He was the editor-in-chief of Super Street magazine, and I was on another magazine, and we were sort of competitors, but in reality, not really competing at all because John's, the book that he was on, Super Street at the time, was massive, was huge. It was a little tiny publication.
And also, unlike Ed, John's a really nice guy that everybody loves.
Exactly. Super nice, very super knowledgeable, as you will find out. And we're going to talk all about his new show, which is Super Street Garage on the MotorTrend network, but also about the future of tuning. Yeah, look, spoiler alert, we're going to spend most of the time talking about his background, his love of cars, and we get to the EV stuff closer to the end. So don't get all mad.
If you like old junky Japanese cars, you're going to love this show.
Yes, and all the inside baseball on automotive publishing in the late 90s through the 2000s.
Southern
era.
California history.
Yeah. So let's get started because this one goes super long. All right, so John Naderi, or Nads.
Nads.
As you are known. Wild, we just learned a first time on a podcast, which is wild. I would think that somebody would have reached out. There's tons of like tuner podcasts or automotive podcasts.
I was supposed to create a podcast for another brand that I worked for, and I'm like, I need to figure out what a podcast is first and foremost.
All right. Well, welcome. We'll be gentle-ish.
But it is crazy as you are, I would call you a key person of influence in the sector you inhabit. And it's weird you've never been on any podcast.
Or a consumer of until ours.
Is this how we're doing? Are we on right now?
We're on, baby.
Can I take a moment to just
Yeah.
hijack this for a second and just say like, what an honor it is to be with you two guys?
Oh,
because
come
no,
on.
seriously, I'm just gonna like I'm a professional admirer of you.
We don't take compliments.
Or to use,
at all.
I know you don't, but that's why I'm going to do it because we're that way with each other, and I'm honestly fangirling out, to use the parlance of our times.
Wow.
And I will say that Ed and I go way back.
Yes.
To the days, nowadays we share waves, but back then we used to fight for newsstand space. When I was the editor-in-chief of Super Street magazine,
Right.
Ed was the editor-in-chief of an upstart book called we're called books.
Yeah,
back
we
in the
call
day.
them
We call them
books.
books because we try to elevate ourselves to a higher level.
Sure.
And so Ed was an editor of Import Racer.
With an
Yeah?
exclamation point.
With an exclamation
and it
point.
wasn't import tuner.
And it wasn't import tuner, of course
right.
not, of course not.
Right.
And Ed, when he arrived on the scene, he didn't so much arrive as he hovered over it. And it wasn't because he thought he was better than the rest of us. It was because he looked at everything from a fresh, inventive perspective. So I
Right.
guess you could say
Way too kind.
it was inevitable
Oh,
that we end up here.
whoa,
There it is.
whoa.
So I got that one in there. And
Oh,
also I
whoa.
want to say, I can't say that without like a Hugo Weaving, Agent Smith sort of inflection where it's like, not impossible, Mr. Anderson, inevitable. You have to kind of give it that, there it is. And for Johnny was the first time I met you.
Oh, wait.
Am I jumping ahead?
I wrote
You
it
had
down.
your
No,
written
no.
down?
Just so you know, Ed and I both wrote down what we believe. Because John is he's just like
Been
woven
around.
into the fabric of Los Angeles, as far as I can see.
Funeral
And
world.
so we wrote down what we think was the first time we met you.
Do we do this now?
Yeah, let's do it now. So
okay.
go
So
ahead.
where I know for a fact I met you was I had a startup, a multi-channel network way back before there were multi-channel networks that we were trying to build, and it imploded in 2008 with the financial crisis,
Yeah.
as with everything else. It's funny
Sure.
that when you have VC funding, it flows like a spigot, fast and uncontrolled, and it shuts off just as quickly. It's like one of those things.
Yeah.
So for me, we stumbled upon a guy named Emil Rensing.
Oh.
And it was a
Oh.
barbecue at Emil's house, and you were manning the queue, and your wife was then girlfriend,
Yeah.
and you guys were just the coolest couple. I did a little research. This is early Google days.
Okay.
Did a little research on you and started reading you and following you, and you did a little work with Steve Levy too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but like to you, like your writing to me, you and both Ed, like David E. Davis Jr., Gene Jennings, Peter Egan.
Get outta here.
Whoa.
I mean, Dan
No,
Neal,
really get outta here.
Dan Neal. No, seriously, Dan Neal, Sam Smith. Shout out to Sam Smith.
Wow.
Sam Smith, Jack Baruth, and Davey G. Johnson. Those are the ones that I like. I look up to. It's raw, acerbic, authoritative. It's very much humorous, you know, and I love that. And I love the way you guys write. And so, huge fan. And also, shout out to what you're doing with Davies 914. So,
well, trying to get it done.
For those that are listening, you know,
Davey
we're
was
toasting.
a friend of ours.
We're toasting
passed
Davey.
away.
Yeah.
This is not our first paid guest, by the way.
Right,
I just want everybody listening.
No,
to this.
I have to say,
our paid guests kind of sucked. But in terms of compliments,
no, I mean, but no, Ed and I used to fight. We'd show up at media gatherings and we'd elbow for time.
But you're wrong. We met well before that.
Oh,
I think we met at a Formula D event at Irwindale in approximately either 2005 or 2006, and I was with Bumbeck.
Oh my God! Yeah. Okay, Mike Bumbeck.
And I remember we're wandering
yeah.
around the pits, and he's like, "Do you know Nads?" I'm like, "There's a guy named Nads." He's like, "Well, John Naderi, do you know him?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Oh, you should meet him." I can't. I'm trying to do my Bumbeck impersonation. It's not coming out well. But anyways, yeah, I think that's when we met, and then I think we hung out at two parties at Mr. Rensing's
yes,
house.
there was a couple. There was a couple.
Yeah, there was one where Davey was there, and it was a very infamous Halloween party.
Yes.
The young lady was dressed as Wonder Woman.
Yes,
and can't talk about the rest of
yes.
it. And then so
My turn.
well, Emil went to prison. I always like bringing that up.
I know, exactly. I mean, that was like I was hitching my wagon to the wrong. It was almost like people were blinking in SOS while I'm like, what's the deal? I'm just trying to find some funding for my gig here.
So we're going to talk about some of the things John referenced, including the startup, the MCN. But I think I met you at Tokyo Auto Salon in 2003-ish.
Okay.
If you probably gone, the funny thing is,
I started in '99 was my first TAS.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And so here's the funny thing, right? So John comes from the tuner world, and actually we caught up about a month ago, and I forgot that you also were at overboost.com, which is like one of the first automotive tuner sites like ever period full stop, because that was like 1998.
Predates 98. Predates Autoblog, Jalopnik. It was the first like three image text. They go, it's a blog. And I'm like, what's a blog?
Kids,
it's
overboost.com.
Yes,
Look it up. I mean, MotorTrend site had only been up since 1996. So that's 2 years later is the first sort of automotive forum like tuner site.
Oh yeah.
And but you had started at Max Power before that, right?
Yep.
What's Max?
Max Power?
Great name.
Max Power was an EMAP publication.
It was.
So
Okay.
EMAP was a British publishing company.
Bought from Willis Stein, which bought from Robert E. Peterson, which was the original MotorTrend.
Max Power eventually became Eurotuner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
It started as Max Speed. It wasn't the Max Power of the UK. As sad as I am to admit that, but it wasn't that. It wasn't the Laddie book that they did in the UK. But because EMAP owned both of them, they allowed us to use the name here.
Yep.
And Max Power is one of the best Simpsons episodes ever.
Oh, 100%.
Homer changes his name to Max Power.
So, but you were at Max Power. So this is in this bio you handily sent us. So you were, and I want to get back.
I was asked to send you. By the way,
really?
I really.
Oh.
You know, aside from referring to Nads in the third person, Nads hates writing about it himself.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, we're all over the place now. Well, I want to go back to like your earliest days, but so you were at a magazine, at the time, 150 plus pages, big, thick, pretty thick book.
Super Street?
No. Super Street was way big. I was just telling another guy.
366 pages at our peak.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
It's a ton of work. But you were at Max
Most of
Power.
them
You went to Overboost, and then you came back to Super Street in 2003.
2001.
2001, sorry. And so the first editor was Matt Pearson. The second editor-in-chief was
Richard S. Chang.
Richard Chang, my buddy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Chang Bang
Richard.
was like, oh, God.
And then
Like another one of my automotive literary heroes.
Yeah, one of the best.
Yeah.
And then, so you were there in 2001, which is right around, I got in 2000, starting freelancing, but at Import Racer at 2001. But I think it was 2003, Tokyo Auto Salon. And the funny thing is back in the day, Turbo magazine used to
they had the big tour.
They had the tour. Yeah. So they did this trip to Japan.
They still do it. Mike Ferrer still does it as
really?
D-Sport. They still do it. And
wow,
a couple dozen people. You pay a fee, and then you get airfare, hotel. You get to go at Tokyo Auto Salon, and then you stay for a few days after and go to like Amori Factory and a couple like
dinners.
Zama,
And,
a couple things.
For those of us that didn't work for a JDM tuner magazine, how cool was the Auto Salon in 2003?
It was wild. But I'm telling you, the funniest thing is that like we were at this little. I was an import racer, which was again. I can do the whole family tree of automotive publishing, but this is like a tiny offshoot of what was McMullen, and
Y
Yee,
Visionary,
Y Visionary. Yeah, so the McMullen and Yee and the Yee family, the patriarch passed away, and then the widow launched this company, and we relaunched a bunch of other titles that were in this space, but. We were like so low budget. We're like, how do we? Damn, we gotta go to this tuner show. What's the best way to do it? We're like, let's just go on our competitors tour. So we
I remember that now. That was amazing.
We would go. We went on the turbo tour like everybody else.
That's wild.
That's hilarious.
Really?
Because it is really a good bargain.
It's a super good bargain, and they take you everywhere. And like,
but they didn't care that you were a competitor.
No, they're like, no, you're paying us. We're making a margin off
and
this.
also, don't you think of all people, Ed Lowe would be the one to find a bargain discount
yes,
way to
of
get
course,
you
I'm
to
going.
Japan for
But
Salon?
and this is a long ass intro, but it was at the I think Signal Auto had a party or a dinner.
Oh yeah, they always do
And-
outside of Osaka Auto Messe. Yeah,
And so maybe it must not. I swear it's at Tokyo Auto Salon, but
they asked us if we should invite you too. They asked me, they go, "Would you be offended?" And I'm like, "No, I think it'd be funny if Ed kind of." I remember this now. Yeah.
So, but I was at the dinner, and Howard Lim, the publisher of Super Street, gave a speech, and you guys were very close to the Signal folks, and then Howard was like, "Wow, we should let Ed speak," and I was like, "What?" And I remember my voice went up like 3 octaves. I was like, "Thank you so much. I don't even know what I'm doing here. Like, this is Super Street." We're all over the place.
Oh no, we're right in the right place.
But I just want to mention that where John comes from, and yeah, Overboost was a big deal. Super Street, though, in the era he was at, was the biggest deal. Like for you kiddos out there who don't know what magazines are, producing and publishing a 300+ page magazine every month is nuts. Okay, right now magazines have been in decline, free fall for years.
I think free fall is a better word than decline.
Yeah, the biggest one out there still has been like Vogue, and Vogue's September issue has always been like the monster, and it's like 400 pages but they do that once a year. Like they have this massive,
and that's also
issue.
250 pages of really nice ads.
Yes.
So.
And which is a great point, because our long-serving sales guy at Super Street, who's no longer with our company, Willie Yee, he's now at SEMA.
Oh, I love Willie.
Willie told me that in the peak of Super Street, in early 2000s, they raised rates. They raised the rates on advertisers 3 times in 1 year to get them to get out of the magazine, because it was getting so thick that the next magazines are built in packages of like 16 pages, like these forms. The higher you go, the more pages you go, you have to go up on a postal rate. And if we got to the next postal rate, like all the margins get blown apart, everything it becomes
too much.
It's too much.
Yeah.
So they just raised rates, and people were like, shoot, we
don't have a choice.
We don't have a choice. But it's wild. So John comes from that era of publishing, and
now where did Import Tuner? Because that was
Import Tuner was pre Peterson Publishing.
Okay.
Import Tuner was ran by a brand called McMullen Argus.
Yes.
And they had sport compact car, turbo, sport truck, Import Tuner, Honda Tuning, and a couple other competitors to Super Street.
They had Truckin' too.
Truckin'
Truckin'.
also as
So
well.
I worked. I worked
Ed
for
and
Steve Silwa, rest in peace, who
Yep,
was
Steve.
the publisher of Truckin', and his guys, Courtney Hollowell and Brian McCormick,
my
and all those guys. I worked
goodness,
with those guys at Y Vision.
Yep.
That's how I learned magazine publishing.
Got it.
But just to frame it up, and we're like, again, this is all.
No, this is great. Look,
Peter. So the company that everybody at this table and a lot of people in the industry that do car stuff, you kind of have to pass through the walls of the Peterson, whatever form the Peterson Publishing has taken.
Even if it's Warner Brothers Discovery, HBO Max at the moment.
We call it was like the Pepsi
10.
Pepsi 10, right?
Peterson, EMAP, Primedia, Source Interlink,
yes,
and the Enthusiast Network.
Before it was then sold to Discovery, which is now Warner Brothers Discovery.
I can't think. Someone please come up with a good acronym.
But
for that.
EMAP is good, because that's the one I always forget. I got because that was just before my time.
There's a couple and there's KKR in there too. There was some,
and Willis Stein was in there for a hot second as well.
Some investments.
I didn't even know those.
Yeah.
Anyways, the thing that kiddos, you guys who don't know what the hell we're talking about, when we talk about magazines.
3 old men ranting right now.
Right.
Well,
no, Peterson Publishing was like Peterson was like Zuckerberg of today. Like Peterson, like the guy was minting money. He's
the guy who invented the Automotive magazine.
So what people don't get, right? Like William Randolph Hearst. We know Hearst Castle, but he was able to do that because he published things. And when Robert
Yellow
Peterson
journalism.
died, he was the 19th wealthiest person in the United States of America.
Oh, yeah.
And he died in like 99 or something.
Did you go to any of his parties? They had
I did.
the parties.
Oh, you did?
It used
at
to
the,
be
at the Peterson Museum, which what used to be a Macy's. So
Right.
it looked like an old. It didn't look the way it does now.
Yeah.
All thanks to the current.
How were the
Peter Mullen
parties?
and-
No, there's also. I'm talking the ones at. I guess it's now Tejon Ranch.
Oh,
The-
I never went to those. Those were all the sales guys, and that was I just missed that time. So if you ever get David Freiberger to come on this show,
yeah.
which I doubt you.
No,
will.
we asked him. He said flat
But
no.
no, yeah.
I think he said like.
I would love it if he came on with a gasoline forever.
I
shirt,
think he
you know?
said so. I could look it up because the last time I texted him, but he was just like
respectfully, politely.
No, it wasn't even that.
It wasn't even respectfully or polite. The one thing that I was wondering why you brought me on, I feel like the opposition leader because Honda used to be Earth Dreams and we're the green guys, but anything, I'm like, oh my
We'll get
God,
to that.
I'm fuel powered here. But anyways, so that was just before my time. And also more the editorial side was, you know what, we have to let you do what you do so we could sell and make money. So at that time, there was, basically, I could say it now because everybody's probably dead and gone, but it was shotguns and cocaine and that sort of vibe and everything. And, they were out there. Yeah, they had some parties. They also had sales trips to Mexico.
Salmon fishing in Alaska.
Oh boy. And
all
those
sorts of
guys,
stuff.
they would go for, if you were the top earners,
Yes.
you get to go on the sales
Just to
trip.
clear the record, David was super, super polite. He just
Okay.
he was
I know,
super
I know.
polite.
And I
He even
love
said
Dave.
thank
I
you
love
for
Dave.
considering
It's
me.
yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
just
It's
says
not
he-
his
he
thing.
just said I don't
It's not
want to
his
do
thing.
it. But the other thing, real quick, we should talk about is, and this is just more since we're inside baseball, let's go deeper. The the reason why everybody in this business, especially in Southern California, has spent time at Peterson is because they owned not just like the few books we're talking about, every single magazine
At
there
peak,
was.
it was like 60, 67, 68.
Oh my
Car
God!
magazines.
Hunting,
Yeah.
guns and ammo, fishing, scuba diving,
Splash. Was
just,
that Splash? No,
Splash, the jet ski,
Yes,
the
yes.
jet ski one, and everything,
Yeah.
just everything.
And there was the the Peterson 24, which is my favorite thing.
What's the?
Oh, yeah.
I don't.
So you
Yeah.
hire
Hire a 24-year-old,
24 hours a day,
24-year-old.
24 years old,
20
24,000 a year.
Pay
Yeah,
them $24,000 a year, and they'll leave in 24
They'll
months.
Yep,
stick around
yeah,
for 24 months, and then
yeah,
they'll
I've heard
go and
that,
get a
I've heard
better
that,
job.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
No, but
So-
it's where a lot of people cut their chops and learned. I mean, we still have stuff. There are people throughout the industry that have passed through the halls and are in PR. They're in product planning. They're all sorts of different places. So
Yeah.
there's a long way of establishing John's credibility
Age.
in the tuner space. But why don't we just get out of the way why you're here to begin with? You kind of asked me that question. We're doing a little bit of shilling today on behalf of the MotorTrend group, on behalf of our multi-platform media conglomerate. John is the host of one of our new shows that has nothing at all to do with electric cars or the
Well,
future.
don't say nothing. You never
Okay,
know.
yes, thank you, Johnny.
As far as
Yeah,
we know,
I have a
as far as
point
we
about
know,
that.
Yeah,
no
yeah.
spoilers.
Oh.
But it's called Super Street Garage,
Yes, it is.
and it just debuted this week, and this episode should be out, I think. Ooh, this actually might be next week.
June 21st, or July 21st. I'm sorry.
Oh,
We dropped
July
July
21st.
21st.
Sorry,
Oh, it's
July.
coming
The-
out after my show.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, the announcement. Sorry,
The announcement just dropped
Just dropped.
yesterday. Also, love Ed too. I make a post. This is not a flex. 130 comments. Oh, we love you. So great. And I write. This is the equivalent of, let's run it up the flagpole and see if it makes a splash. I write, you don't sell the bacon, you sell the sizzle.
Right. I
And
saw
Ed
that.
just posts a steak emote because it is. You don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle. But I love bacon. I love steak too. And I'm like, and it irks me to my core. And it's nothing about Ed. This is about me and my imposter syndrome and everything else. And I'm like, oh, that one hurt the most because I'm like, he's right. And I was erroneous in my metaphor about bacon and sizzle versus steak and sizzle.
Oh, I just put steak as I saw sizzle. That's all.
Yeah.
It was late.
You got to think like Ed. Meat,
I know.
Meat?
It's like,
hungry. No, so
we
you're-
just made the
So
announcement
what
yesterday.
is this show?
So-
Tell us what the show is
Super
about,
Street
John.
Garage.
It's about 44 minutes long. Is that it? Can we go on to the next question? So,
No. Come
But
on.
bump.
What do
Thank you. I'll be here all podcast.
You're telling me you're shooting for 5 days, which to me
Oh
sounds
yeah.
totally
So,
insane.
well, obviously, MotorTrend and the MotorTrend network and Discovery and everything have been doing great things and amazing things, Roadkill and Hot Rod Garage and Bitch and Rides and all of it, and have been building these sort of build shows based on like, let's take a car and let's transform it. And they've done it before with Homes and Queer Eye for the Straight Guy and let's revive this bar and let's do everything. It's that natural progression. So let's do it with a car. So they said, if this is maybe too much inside baseball, but the demographic's getting a little older, and we want to reach a younger demographic. And I'm like, I'm not the one to do that with because I'm one of the older ones, stay off my lawn and sort of thing. And I said, let's talk about it, but I really want to get more progressive with it and everything. So it's basically from that golden era of super street modifications, the Civics and Integras. Back in the day, there was a Southern California university called University of California, Irvine. And at the time, people called it the University of Civics and Integras. And because every kid drove one of those cars,
Yep.
And it's sort of having sort of a renaissance, a rebirth, a phoenix rising from the ashes, if you will. And even people will credit it to the Fast and the Furious. Fast and the Furious caused that first bump. And I was
by the way, Fast and Furious was 22 years ago.
22 years ago. It was amazing.
So
and I helped bring
it.
some of the cars on that show. That's how old I am. On that movie. That's how old I am.
Wow.
I worked with Craig Lieberman. Yeah.
That might be how we met,
Possibly.
Because
that was,
Lieberman, same tribe, right?
Yeah.
Well, we are Jewish, me and Craig. We are not
so
related.
Let's see a Chinese guy, a Persian, and a Jew walk into a podcast.
Right.
So Super Street Garage,
it's a throwback to the golden era days, but we not only want to have it's a build show, so we want to show like, hey, we're going to take an old Civic and we're going to revive it or whatever car we're going to be doing. But I said I want to showcase why we're doing this. What are the reasons behind these mods? We did the very first episode as an RX-7, a first generation RX-7, and we cut the fenders out and we put the little black over fenders on, and that was like kind of the origins of that outlaw style. What's the outlaw style? What did that come from? All credit Rod Emery, my friend. It's like Rod Emery was the one who sort of did that. Where back in the day, oh my God, you had to have, VIN numbers matching and everything, and you couldn't make any modifications. And Rod was a guy who was like, no, I want to make a hot rod Porsche.
But what's kooky, and just since you're talking about Rod, like, his grandfather was doing that to Lincoln's.
His grandfather was the
50s.
first one to chop and channel a vehicle at Valley Customs.
Yeah.
Then his dad invented the Baja Bug, and then Rod invented the Outlaw Porsche. Right. So his son has got his son and daughter have a lot of legacy to live up to.
But they'll be a podiatrist.
It's interesting though, because you were mentioning the diversity at this table at the moment and all these different types of cars. But it what always bums me out about let's just call it the SEMA stuff, is that it really is so, I don't even say politicized, but almost along racial lines. Like, I love lowriders. They are the coolest cars in the world.
For those listening, I'm raising my hand right
now.
And
I took my kid when he was 3 or 4 to a lowrider show up in Elysian Park, and we were the only Caucasians there. Yeah. And I love going to the big the Long Beach JDM show. You know what I'm talking about.
Japanese classic, the JCCS, and then there's also Toyota Fest, Toyota Owner and Restorers Club.
Yeah, and it's
shout out to Terry Yamaguchi.
And that's a bit more mixed, but it's kind of like Caucasians and Asians and you know what I mean? It sucks that
to be honest, I love LA, but some of it is kind of an LA phenomenon, because when you get out and you go to go to Nopi Nationals, you got a lot of white boys out there.
Oh yeah,
it's totally an LA thing.
Airbag, candy coat pin. You're just like, okay.
Or maybe a Chevy Cavalier instead of a Civic, because they got to buy American.
I've been to what's that place? Donaldsonville, Louisiana. They have these big Saturday shows at the Walmart parking lot. It's mostly like donks, but they're awesome. It's a Jack Nissan Maxima wrapped like a Skittles bag or whatever, and it's all sorts of folks. So yeah, anyways, it's just, that's cool that you want to tell the history of it. And...
Yeah, we want to talk about where the origin of a lot of this, big body drift cars and drag racing and import drag racing, let me say, and drift cars and, all of that, VIP. We did a VIP car. Where did that come from?
Right.
And I'm doing some, I nerd out like you guys, and I'm doing some deep dive research. I'm like, oh, wow, everything I thought about this was wrong. The origin story that I thought about this. Because a lot of it's pre-internet. It's Internet 1.0 for all the old people.
And you probably also find, what I always find this is that, like, there's this side of a story. Like, Joe invented it. I was helping the Peterson Museum. They have a Porches in California exhibit.
I love that
going on right now. Yeah. And I was helping them. I did very little, but I was just helping a guy there get in touch with people. That was my thing.
Yep.
And it was like, we need to get in touch with this. I won't even say what it is because it's controversial, but we need to get in touch with this guy about this car because he invented this, this like Mulholland Outlaw.
Oh, yeah.
And then I contacted people. They're like, he didn't do it. That guy took credit for it. It was that dude. And I'm like, wait, what? And it's just wild, anyways, the two sides of the story is interesting when you do research.
So, but just let's get down to some brass tacks. The show itself, you said 44 minutes long.
44 minutes long, 13 episodes, season 1. Different car each episode. We're trying to build something that we start with something and we're trying to transform it into, something
got a co-host?
Cool. Got a co-host. Oh my God, I have the co-host. His name's Amir Bentatu. He is currently campaigning what could be the fastest time attack car in the world. It is an Acura RSX with a 900 horsepower K20. From a
inline four-cylinder,
turbocharged,
larger than your head.
Turbocharged, yep. And he could make more.
Where is he campaigning this?
This will go at Buttonwillow Road, Atlanta. He eventually will take it to Australia, where there's a Sydney Motorsports Park World Time Attack Challenge, and then the birthplace of Time Attack, the nerdiest motorsport ever, is at Scuba Circuit.
If you don't know what Time Attack is,
what is Time Attack?
It's basically a qualifying lap.
It is. It's basically a hot lap.
If you're like a new fan of
it's
F1.
one car against the clock. It was launched in Japan, and it was Japanese tuner cars. They said, I think I have the fastest car in Japan. And Rev Speed Magazine organized a thing, and they picked a track, Scuba Circuit. It's a 1.3 mile circuit. Yeah. And they said, it has a great combination of long straights and tight corners. This is the example of what an all-around car should be.
Got it.
And you would have guys would show up with CRXs, Top Fuel, June Auto, like all these vintage time attack shops, and they would go and bring what they call demonstration cars or demo cars. And they would bring them right off the Tokyo Auto Salon floor. They would have the Tokyo Auto Salon in early January, and right afterward, they go, your car better be prepared to run, which is such a difference for the tuner world that shows up to the SEMA show, if anybody's aware. Yeah. The SEMA show is what they – there's a thing they call Bluetooth drive shaft is the joke about SEMA show cars. These cars were, like, ready to run. Yeah. So they built them, finished them, did whatever testing they could do before they finished them while the paint is still wet. And then they took them to this little track, and they started running numbers. No one knew. There was no internet, but there was magazines. And you'd see this magazine, you're like – what is that thing? And you couldn't read anything. It was just all in kanji or katakana. And you'd read it, which is the Japanese script, and there would just be a time next to it.
Right.
And you'd see like 2 minutes and 3 seconds. And you're like, what does that mean? Oh, I'm sorry, 1 minute and 3 seconds at Scuba. And you're like, what does that mean? And then all of a sudden it became a thing. And for me, when I fell in love with it, it was Richard Chang in the 2000 issue of Super Street Magazine. Tom Myronak from HKS brought this car. It was a Japanese car from a tuner named HKS, which stands for Hasegawa Kitagawa Sigma, which Hasegawa and Kitagawa were the co-founders, and Sigma was the bank. But that's going way too deep into it. But they were
it's not Hong Kong sports.
Yeah, it's not Hong Kong sports. That's what everybody said. That's why I made a point of saying that. But they would build these mega cars, and they built a Toyota Altezza, which we knew as the IS300, and in Japan it had a different engine than our engine in it. It had a four-cylinder engine. 3SGTE, thank you. And I didn't want to go too deep. I didn't want to nerd out, but I love how Ed's throwing in
knows stuff.
I didn't. I heard
the cover he's talking about of Super Street. This is like
the epic
cover.
April of 2000.
It's a dry carbon fiber weave.
It's basically a GT300 car, which is a Japanese Super GT, which used to be Japanese Grand Touring Car Championships, which used to be Japanese Touring Car Championships. But it's basically that type of car. I mean, it's got inboard suspension in the rear. It was too wild that people sort of dismissed the lap. It ran a 55-second lap when everybody else was running a 1 minute lap, and the entire tuner community kind of poo-pooed it and went, no, that's not a time attack car, because it was too motorsports. So I wanted nothing more than when I became the editor of Super Street, I'm like, I want to bring these cars here, and I want to do a time attack series. And they're like, what is it? Do they race against each other? I'm like, no, they don't. And they're like, what do they do? I'm like, one car at a time. And they're like, how are you going to do that? Oh, no more than 20 cars. And they're like, who builds cars here? I'm like, no one does, you know? And I'm like, I just want to bring a car and hope someone will show up. And we brought, you know, we had a close relationship with Signal Auto, which was a tuning shop in Osaka. And they had a very...
Chop Top Civic?
Yeah, no, but they brought the Chop Top Civic as a drag car.
Right.
This was the R34, and it was called the Majura car because of this crazy purple color
paint.
shifting
Yes,
paint.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
I've seen that car.
Yeah, that's a pretty famous
where
car.
did
It's an
I see that car?
R34,
Yeah.
B&R 34 Skyline.
I saw it at
so.
some show somewhere. Yeah.
So a
They're
very
still
famous
around.
car. Well, no, actually, there's a guy named Colton whose Instagram handle is Tuning Supreme, I think, and he's on a mission
He buys them all.
to rescue all these cars. His father owns a company called Redline Restorations. They do Johnny's World, Pebble Beach cars. They're doing like $20 million Ferraris and everything. And the son said, I know how to build these cars, and I've done this my whole life, but I don't want to do this. I want to rescue Kazama's green S15, the D1
Right.
GP Championship. I want to
The
rescue
top
the
secret
BR,
cars,
the
yes.
top secret cars. And he's rescuing all these old, and the tuners are like, we don't care about these cars. I think I sold it to this guy and he's tracking them down. He's finding the original graphic, and he's actually restoring these cars. And he did it with the R34. And the funny story about the R34 is I went to his shop. It's in Connecticut. And I went to his shop, and I said, I've ridden in this car. And he goes, have you really? Are you sure? And I'm going to go, yeah, I've ridden in this car, and I brought it to a time attack. And he goes, really? And I'm like, I was in this car when I got in an accident. And he goes, no, I don't think it's ever been in an accident. I'm like, I was in this car. So, okay, Keith, I could say this now because I think the statute of limitations is gone on this. Picked us up at we took the Shinkansen, the bullet train down from Narita, from Tokyo to Osaka to meet with Signal. And he picked us up in the car, and I was riding in the car with R.J. DeVera, who's another famous influencer in the space, and a kid named Rakesh Patel. And the three of us are in the car. Our luggage is in the back, and Kosuke's given us a ride around the kind of Osaka Wangan, this little expressway loop.
Was he playing the Lion King soundtrack?
Yeah,
When he did?
it's like,
I did that.
yeah.
I did that thing with him. Too.
Right. So he's kind of mobbing out, you know, I guess Osaka, Mexico, I guess we should say, and going way too fast. And he comes up on a car, and he's trying to make a move. And as he goes to hit the brakes, he goes, too much weight. He screams. That's all he spoke in English. He said, too much weight. And then he goes to change lanes and punch it, and he goes, oh, low boost. And so he didn't have the power to get around the car. So as he's trying to go around these two cars, if the people were listening, I'm demonstrating a really aggressive maneuver. And there's this guy in like a little Honda Acti, which is this little JDM truck, a little bread truck driving. It's like 4 in the morning, and he's trying to deliver his bread. And Kita-san comes across and like clips the front end of this car, like clips it hard. And you see the little car in our mirrors. And I was in the front seat, and I look in the back seat, and I see like RJ and Rack are just very quiet. And he goes, okay, it's okay. Daijoubu desu ka? And he says, which is like, it's okay. Right. He gets us into the thing, parks the car in the shop. We take all our bags out. Let's go drink. It's fine. So now it's like 4 or 5 in the morning. We're going out drinking. We're staying out with them and everything. We come back in the morning, like 11 noon. We go to shoot whatever we're going to shoot. The car's already been through the body shop, painted, corrected, cleaned, and everything. So I told Colton about that. He looked at the spot, and he goes, oh, my God. And you could see the spot where the quarter panel got creased in.
So it was just a little kiss. You just gave a little tap.
Yeah, it was just a little bit. So all apologies to the bread delivery.
I think I saw that car because I remember it was a purple R34.
It's a very infamous car
in the U.S. And I was like, it was like in Santa Barbara, somewhere weird. And I was with somebody, and they were flipping out. They're like, "That's
the car.
That's it." Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, like I don't know,
So
the specials.
This show though that you're doing.
Oh yeah. So what happens on the show?
No. The show the aim is important because you kind of touched on it. Like the audience. Well, you started it. The audience that we have, MotorTrend has a lot of automotive shows. We have Hot Rod Garage, we got Roadkill, we got Dave Kindig, we got Chasing Classic. We got all these shows. But they're all, if you're squint your eyes, they're all kind of a certain genre, of a certain type of car, or we've largely ignored the tuner, the youth. We did JDM Legends. I thought it was a cool show.
So did I.
I thought the cars were really cool. It wasn't as popular as it could have been. So you could call this our sophomore attempt at hitting this really gaping hole in our programming. Like and I'm probably talking out of school here, but we talk a lot about like why don't we have a good tuner show on the channel? Like why have we never been able to do this? And this goes back to our YouTube days, and I have a whole story about that. But so the burden on you is high. It's heavy.
It is.
Like
It
you're basically going to launch a show about the youth on a channel that might not be ready for it,
Receptive
or
to the Utes,
to the
as they say.
Utes. Yeah. So we're wishing you the best of luck. And the show.
Johnny laughs maniacally at that.
I just
at the well wishes.
I've had a lot of shows on MotorTrend canceled over the years. They come back.
The show is on the MotorTrend linear cable TV channel. It will be available on our SVOD
on the SVOD
app first, then Freevee, and then once all 13 seasons are out, it goes to linear so that they can
the 13
do
episodes,
once a week.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm sure you're filming once a month as
We
a
are.
cadence.
Yep.
Yeah.
So same as
That's a lot of work,
new show.
right?
It's pretty aggressive. Actually, we're filming a little bit more than once a month. We started in January and we've been going once every other week.
Okay.
So
Wow.
we have a
Oh, so
2 week,
you're nearly
2 week
done.
hiatus. We're close. Yeah, we're filming episode 9 right now.
Okay, cool. And then so give me the first show. Tell me what happened.
The first
day
show
1, and then tell me on day 2, 3, 4.
The first show they ask us, what car do you want to do? And I'm like, yellow Honda Civic.
Nice.
And a hatchback. And they said, why? And I'm like, that was the car back then. That was the car. There's a
This
couple
is
different
like a
generations.
99.
So there's 3 different generations. There's like you could say 4 or 5. There's like the 3rd generation, the EAT. The 4th generation is the EF. The 5th generation is the EG. And the 6th generation is the EK.
And which one did you use?
I picked the EK. Yeah. So I said the EK is kind of the one. And because they also made it as a Civic Type R in Japan.
Right.
And was also one of the first Type Rs that they did.
And that's important too because we've had now in the U.S. 2 generations of Type R, but they go way back in other markets.
Yeah, 3.
especially.
You had the
Well,
EP. You had the EP3.
No, the EP3 didn't make it here in the U.S. EP3 was not a Civic Type R in the U.S. That was a Euro Type R. It was in the UK. It's Type R in the UK.
Yeah,
we did not
made it
get
to the US.
We did not get the Civic
That was
Type
the
R in
weird,
the US.
diamond.
Oh my God! It had the best
strange-
shifter
yeah.
ever. I love the shifter, the rally shifter that's set up on the dash.
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
it had the shifter coming out of the
out
dashboard.
of the dash, out of the dash. Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but I believe we did not.
It never came here.
Thank you, John.
Last,
I don't know.
the
You guys
last
know
one-
way more than me about
No,
all this
no,
stuff.
I wouldn't know
But
anything.
I believe that the Civic Type R
That
for the
made it
EP3
to
generation,
the UK.
that was the
It made it to the
that
UK.
was a Euro R.
never came here. Yeah. What was? I was for the numbers.
So, but we
F.
also had an Integra Type R here before.
We did have an
The
Integra
Acura
Type
had
R.
an Integra
Yeah,
Type
yeah,
R, and
yeah.
actually, the Integra Type R that came to the U.S. is more rare than the Japanese Type R, which is odd for my people because we always want what comes from what we call the motherland, which is the
Sure.
Japanese cars. But they produced more in Japan than they did in the U.S. So in the U.S. there was only like 6,000 left-hand drive.
And
versions made.
so you take an EK.
I take an EK
And it's
and
yellow?
I paint it yellow because,
Okay, you
and
paint it
here's a little
yellow. Okay,
backstory because back in the day, I produced.
What years are the EK? Just
The EK is a 1997 to 2000.
Yeah, so 99 is in my head was the year.
So,
yeah.
and they had 2 different versions of it. They had an early version, which they called the Zenki, and the later version, which they called the Koki. And the headlights were a little different. The brakes were a little different. The radio, power steering, couple different mods. But the later generation is the one you want because it's got the better headlights.
Right.
It's a better
And
look
if
for it.
you're listening and you don't know exactly which one, I think this is the same years that the Del Sol, or is it Del Sol the
Del
one
Sol's the
before?
previous before.
Okay, so one
previous
before.
to EG. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's a real cute
Ed, are
one.
you
All right.
doing your
Yeah,
research?
I guess. Yeah, I totally thought.
No, it
my
never
God,
came.
I know.
Kevin- I thought my
They had
buddy
an SI. There
yeah.
was EP3 had an SI.
Yes.
But
So
the
I
SI
guess
was
There
that
are
was
also what you're
Sure.
doing a journalistic thing where I think there was one in the fleet in L.A.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh wow!
But it was a wrong hand driver because it was a UK one.
Yep, exactly.
That had to come. I could be making this up, but it had to come to the headquarters for
whatever reason.
some reason, and it was like we had it. I think like maybe Carlos or somebody grabbed it for something.
Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
I was wrong. I thought. I swear to God, my buddy Kevin, he had it. Maybe he.
Did
I
he
guess it was.
borrow
A,
it
no,
from
I
Mom?
guess it was an SI. I thought it was an-
Anyway, yeah.
Okay, so but let's.
Okay, so you have it now.
First episode,
day one.
I said it's got to be a Honda Civic hatchback,
And
and I picked the EK because I want to introduce everybody to what was back in the day. The front end conversions were a big deal.
Yeah.
The Japanese cars had just different headlights, different fenders, and it was like the unobtainable fruit. It's
Okay.
like what you wanted. So I said we got to do a JDM Civic Type R conversion, and I go that's the one. And they said, what color would you paint? I go, it's got to be yellow. And the reason it's got to be yellow is because in the December of 2002 issue of Super Street Magazine, I went to Japan and I had a scoop, which I don't know if anybody knows what a scoop is anymore, but I had
Exclusive.
like an exclusive on something.
Yeah.
And it was a D1 GP, which is the D1 Drift Championships.
Yep.
And it was the winner of the series before. And it was a gentleman named Nobuteru Taniguchi, which is an icon now.
Right.
And it was what was a Nissan 240SX as we know it as, but it was a Sylvia S15 in Japan.
Yeah.
And it was built by HKS, red with chrome foil graphics. It had these Advan wheels. It was just the unobtainable car. And I'm like, oh my God. The incomparable Wes Allison shot the picture. It was actually red on a green background. So it was like a Christmas thing. It was a whole very festive. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Shot it, ran it. It did horribly on the newsstand. My bosses brought me in and lambasted me, and they go, what is this? They held up the magazine. For those listening, they were holding up the magazine to my face. And I said, oh my God, that's a Nissan S15. That's not a, you know, and they're like, we don't care.
Right.
Put a yellow Civic on the cover. Put a yellow Civic on the cover. Never put something like this on the cover. Now, that car went on to be one of the biggest tuner icons ever, but it was one of my too soon junior moments where I'm like, I think the people will love this. And now everybody's like, I remember that issue. If you remember it, you should have bought it. And lambasted because now I got but they always said yellow Honda Civics do best. So yellow Honda Civic hatchbacks were it. So I wanted to do a yellow Honda Civic. Then they told us something that said, oh, you know, the hosts can buy one car each and kind of keep it for yourself. And I'm like, oh, really? And I'm like, I can't afford that. I can't afford they go, no. You buy the car, and then when we do all the mods, you get the car afterwards. And I'm like, oh, yes, please. So I bought the car. It was a $2,700 car, and we proceeded to put $97,000 worth of modifications.
This is episode 1?
This is episode 1. So we can't afford to do this.
build show.
We went, right? So they told me,
you know what they tell me? They're like,
can you do it for $1,500? Can you modify this car for this?
No, they don't tell me
modify
anything. No,
they tell you to, hey, can you stop buying expensive Willet bourbon?
No, they don't say that. No, we had an $8 stopwatch that was a real piece of garbage on the show yesterday because where you rested, it would change the mode, so we didn't get the time during a live take. And I'm like, this is the worst stopwatch. They're like, well, it was $8. And I'm like, you couldn't have spent more. They're like, $8 is more budget than we had.
So I feel
direct quote from the producer.
I feel like maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but they literally said paper the build out, which is when you do a build, you pick all the parts. And so I did a Google spreadsheet, and I'm a nerd, so I have the sum function on, and so I'm adding a part. I'm like, oh, I need this engine. I got to have these Spoon SW388 wheels, and I'm like going to these these Mugen and Spoon catalogs, and I'm like, I'll take everything available for this car and slam it onto this build. And then as I'm doing it, like the numbers ticking upward, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so getting fired at like day 0. So I submit them the list, and I'm like, hey, again, do you guys have like a budget for this? Because I feel like I want to be authentic, but this could it's getting out of hand, you know? And they said, no, just send it to us. I send it to them. No one replies to me. And I'm like, oh, I'm so fired, you know? And they get back to me 3 days later. They go, hey, Nads, we got to talk to you about your list, you know? And I'm like, oh, here it is, you know? And I'm like, I could change it. I can mod it. No, we want to apologize to you. It's taking a little longer for all the parts to come because they're coming in from all over the world. We bought some stuff on eBay, and we found so bear with us. And it was literally like the Fast and the Furious scene where the truck is driving in with all the boxes of parts. I mean, it was so incredible, like how much we put on that car, you know. Wow. But the very first episode is we've already blown our budget. This is like the entire season's budget. So we have to buy another car, and we wanted to do like the bring a trailer sort of thing. Like, what's the car that we could buy that would be the next future Japanese classic?
Right.
You know, 3rd generation RX-7, completely priced into oblivion. Yep. They found an Acura NSX at the bottom of a lake that is going for like $75,000 now. Right. That like, and there was nothing to that car. You know, I mean, R34 Skylines are going for $250,000. 80 Supra, the 4th generation Supra is going. You know, so crazy. What is that next car? They're like they're challenging us, and I'm like, well, there was E36. BMW, the older generation of the 3 Series BMW, and I said, that's getting kind of a drift tax. There was a 240SX getting a drift tax, which is when everybody descends on this car and turns them into drifters and either wrecks them. And back in the day, it used to be like, take this away from me. You know, first $500 takes it. Now it's like $15,000 doesn't run, no low ballers. I know what I've got.
I know what I've got.
So I said, you know what it could be? Maybe the 1st generation RX-7.
First gen.
You know, the 1st gen. But it's a very particular 1st gen because the very first years of the RX-7 had the 12A carbureted rotor. This one has the 13B with the fuel injection and everything. And I said, so the 85, the GLS SE, with the different taillight garnish. And I said, it's just a bit upscale. And a lot of the old school heads that Ed and I know, the Todd Konecos and the Scott Kummer, the previous generation before us, those guys know those cars are cool, but they're a very small minority, and they're not really connected to this digital
that's a
world.
Funky car, because that's live axle, right?
It is a live axle. So we tried to lower it, and we're trying to figure out how to do the suspension over it. So we struggled
but you
with it a
some
bit.
Old hot rod stuff.
Yeah, so we had to do a little hot rod mods to it and everything, and we were going to flip it, and we kind of fell in love with it. So we ended up not flipping it, and spoiler alert, but we ended up driving it kind of. So we took it for a little drive out in the canyon and everything, and so that's essentially episode one.
So basically,
but we were going to use that flip to help fund the EK. So now,
you have to
we're
sell?
still ridiculously over budget, and we haven't sold the car yet.
I got it.
Our bosses hate us.
Okay, so the idea of the show is you take something that's important to the JDM community, ostensibly,
yes,
and then you turn it into something that could have been on the cover of Super Street.
Exactly, which is a challenge because we have a very truncated shoot window. So they tell us, here's your days. Like the hot rod guys, like no offense to them, but they drag a car out of the weeds, put some carb cleaner and JB Weld on it, and or they'll even just swap an LS into it, and they're like, job done, rat turd and all inside the car. Let's take it to zip tied drags.
It's kind of like,
and you have to paint them.
We have to paint them and finish them and find these parts from Japan and like get all these. And then now it's not even enough to find the parts. Back in the day, Ed's younger than me, but back in the day it was like just get the wheels on. Now it's like, now you have to get the offset right. So you have to find the vintage Japanese wheels. You have to get them refinished and do what's called rebarreling. So that way you take a 15 and you take it to a 16, and then you do a stepped lip, and then you could tweak the offset, which means you could actually make the wheel fit better, and it looks like a new wheel. But
you want to be able to put a Coke can
on
that
lip, the cell phone or the $100 bill or whatever it is, and everything. Trying to get that offset.
So what I'm taking, my takeaway
and that's
from
tough
this
to do
is,
for a TV show.
I could pitch them a show called like Euro Trash, where I get like a Ferrari Mondial and like get it running and get to keep it. That's what I heard.
Swap it. Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Well,
is that accurate?
Yeah, I'll tell you. If you look at the programming on the channel, this will be the last we talk about it. We should move on. But the shows that we have generally are like cars that like end up for like the concours. Like somebody takes a car and just paints it super gloss, like a Kindig makes it like awesome. And then the other side of the shows are like a Roadkill, where like just get it running, get it going,
and get a tetanus shot.
Yeah, exactly. But what John and Amir are trying to do is kind of smash both together. They want the car to be awesome and running really well with the right performance equipment, but also it's not supposed to look like, it needs to look good. It needs to be like
doesn't need 17 coats of lacquer.
Right.
Yeah.
It needs to look like it could win at a import show off or some kind of show. So it's kind of, and to do that on the same production timeline is very difficult. But
serving a lot of masters.
It sounds interesting. It doesn't sound like manufactured. I always go back to the Orange Coast choppers or whatever. There's no.
We're gonna lose the shop.
You're not gonna. Yeah, you're not yelling. You're not wearing a tank top and yelling at Amir and throwing a wrench at his head or something.
But you're throwing a 10 wrench. So
everyone's
all weirded out.
Where did the 10 go?
Yeah, why are you guys using metric on MotorTrend?
So let's. So again, it's gonna be on the motor. Just follow us on Instagram or social. You can find out.
Can I ask a question? Are you doing the wrenching, or are you just
Amir.
pointing?
Oh my goodness, that's the other thing too.
Yeah.
When they called me, not to toot my horn, but I get these calls a lot. Like, hey, do you want to be on a show? And I say, yeah. And I'm like, and I know Johnny, you also auditioned for the original Top Gear. So did I. I was up against some dweeb named Tanner Faust. And I'm like, oh my God. When I saw his name on the call sheet in front of mine, and then RJ DeVera was after me, and I'm like, okay, I'm not getting this gig, I mean, so I actually auditioned. I could have been the next Rutledge Wood. But I'm not as good.
Same here.
I'm not as good as Rut. So,
Weird.
So, and then all kudos to them. They're doing their Hot Wheels show now. So Rut's doing his thing and Tanner's doing his thing. Tanner's up at Pikes Peak right now, which is amazing. He's doing really well.
Tanner, I mean, by the time this airs, he will have run.
He will.
Today is Friday, and they're running on Sunday. But in the middle section, the W's as we call them, he was second behind our boy Randy Popst.
Yep.
Randy's in the crazy Tesla, dark helmet, and Tanner was a second behind him. And
Tanner Faust also is
two monster
the
cars.
Stunt double driver for John Wick.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Among many other things, he did Tokyo
Fast and
Drift
Fast
and
and
everything
Furious.
else. All the Fast and Furious.
Hobbs
he's done a
and
lot.
Shaw.
We'll get Tanner on. I
Yeah,
guess.
Tanner would be an
Tanner
amazing
on.
guest.
Yeah.
Tanner would be amazing.
Yeah, let's get all the old Top Gear guys on before we get MotorTrend Top Gear guys on.
Hey, I mean, at least the old those
guys
will
return
talk
all
to
calls. Well, yeah, return all calls.
yeah.
Good luck, Dax Shepard.
Exactly
Yeah,
calling
exactly.
Back. Yeah.
But so they called me for this show.
Yeah.
And they said, we'd like to talk to you about a Super Street show. And I said, oh, hey, I'd love to talk to you about that. That'd be amazing. Yeah, I'd be honored. So we talk about it, and he goes, I don't know who you are, but I did a Google search on you, and it appears that you've done a lot. The producer, Mike Pantaleo, is like, he's a hot rod guy, and he's like, yeah, so I feel like we should talk. Also, we interviewed a bunch of other people, and when we asked them who else they should speak to a person, everyone else said your name. And I said, oh, wow, that's amazing. So I said, yeah, I would love to talk to you about it. Tell me a little bit about you. What do you think is a future classic? What do you think could be this and that? And I'm like, told him a little bit about what I want to do with the show and everything. He says, great. And then he goes, it's a build show. And I go, ooh, going to stop you right there. For those listening, I'm holding up my very delicate hands right now. The hands of a keyboard warrior and the guy with the trigger.
Soft.
It's a photographer and a writer. And I said, I am not your guy. I could connect you with 30 other people, younger, good-looking men, women, different demographics that can build, they weld, they fabricate, they drive. I don't drive, I don't fabricate or anything. He goes, but you know this and you were around when it first started. We are adamant that you are the one and we want you to help us pick the co-host. Just come in for a chem test. And I said, okay. And a chem test is when they chemistry test. They pair you with another host.
How many people were on your?
I might have seen a couple with.
I tested with 3, and I don't want to say the names because
fine.
and Amir was one of them.
And you don't say the names.
I went with Amir, and he was horrible on his because he's building a car for SEMA, actually building a car where I'm like faking that I build cars, and he's on zero sleep, and he came in super hot, and he's just like, I didn't read the script. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do with my hands, sort of thing and everything. And I felt so bad for him, but I'm like, I believed that Amir was the right guy. And we did one where we had to talk about a Honda Fit and, what we're going to do with it. And we're going to take it to Grid Life and do whatever. And they had a script for us. And I'm doing what I do. I've done this work before. And Amir is very nervous. And then they said, okay, now we're going to take the head off of an LS motor. And I'm like, okay, so now this situation switched. So Amir goes, I've never done this before, but I'll give it a go. And he goes in with the tool and just does it, And then I'm like, I'm watching him and I'm panicking now. And I knew this was going to happen, but I told him, I said, I can't do this and I don't want to do this. Right. So they had me do it on camera and my hands were literally trembling because I've worked on cars and I work on cars, but when you do it in front of a camera, knowing that what you think, even though it's just a chem test, you think the whole world is watching. Right. You're just like, I'm not the guy to be telling you how to remove an LS head.
I'm a big, believer in Murphy's Law. Is that everything is exactly twice as hard as you imagine.
Oh, completely.
Because I was installing some Molly panels on the back of my.
I saw that. Yeah,
and I was like,
that's my level of expertise.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm looking at the parts. I go, okay, this all makes sense. And then parts rolling down the street later, sweating in the sun, like nothing's working. I'm like,
you're left with like 3 bolts at the end.
A washer fell into the taillight assembly, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I finally watched the YouTube video. So it's hard, you're just unscrewing bolts, but it's harder than it looks.
100%. Yeah. So
Jethro used to always say, like, one time we had to fix windshield wipers because we had GoPros and we got caught in a rainstorm and the windshield wipers hit the GoPros and like 45 minutes later we'd gotten one back on and Jethro's like, he's like, Roadkill could have already LS swapped the car. We can't even get a windshield wiper.
Which is why we give all props to David Freiberger.
Oh, 100%.
Who's like the godfather of this kind of content because he doesn't just know all the history, all the backstory, but he can do the wrenching and then he can talk to camera and explain it in a way that if you don't know anything at all about
cars,
excited
about it.
You're excited.
He's
it's fascinating.
He does it really well.
This is a great place to change the topic.
Yes.
Speaking of Freiberger, because what always baffles me about him is that he really only cares about American cars made between a certain number of
Not true.
No, totally true.
No.
No.
He did a couple posts. He's done a couple posts on his love. He's
he likes
old
Jeeps.
Land Cruiser.
I think he did that as a response to Mike Finnegan, his co-host, posting, looking for a CRX for my wife. And people went crazy.
Yeah.
And I think Freiberger kind of looked at that and went, oh, I like old cars too, like the Chevy Love and everything.
But I remember when we were doing Wide Open Throttle, I was mentioning like a Jaguar, and he's like, don't care.
Well,
but to talk to you, why JDM?
Oh, to me?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, why JDM? Where did this fascination
with
start?
him?
Yeah.
No, so,
let's time out just for a second.
No, time out.
No, time out.
No,
you gotta explain what you gotta explain what JDM means.
Oh,
Japanese domestic market.
And yes, and how it is really a sub. It's a niche of a niche. It's a niche of a subculture.
Yeah,
So you could say that John's an expert in JDM, but he's also been a fan of import cars. Okay, in America.
On the whole, of course.
When I said JDM, I meant import.
You're meaning the
Japanese
whole thing.
tuning culture.
Yes.
In other words,
I am a fan of replacement for displacement.
In other words, when the Chevy Cobalt SS came out, you weren't that excited about it.
I actually invited it, and John Heinrichs brought it to a time attack and won outright because the Chevy engineers wrecked all of the rest of my teams, and we had to put it on the cover.
I would also say,
and we actually did not put it on the cover, and Chevy was very angry with me.
I would also say, if you're gonna have a time attack driver, Heinrichs is the guy.
Oh
because
my God,
it's literally a kamikaze mission.
Oh my God,
the Hein Rocket. He was the former chief engineer of Chevy Corvette,
but he's also just like a monster.
He's insane.
Well, he's a one-lap monster because the car is dead after he's done.
Yeah, for sure.
But he's the one who set the 7:59 time in a Cadillac, the second gen.
ring.
Second gen CTSV.
All right. How about to answer your question?
Yeah.
John,
Oh, okay.
No, John. We start from the beginning of this history.
Oh man,
Beginning.
So my history starts where Freiburgers did, Van Nuys Boulevard in the San Fernando Valley. I'm 55. I'd say Freiburger's about 2 years older than me. So he was a little older than me, and I was 14 years old, and I raced BMX bikes because that's what you did in the Valley in the early 80s. And I lived literally right next door to the Van Nuys Cruise area. And the Van Nuys Cruise area kind of died in the late 70s. It's, Chevrolet packed up their plants, the police cracked down on it, there was gang violence and everything. But there was little pockets of it left over, and there was little niches left over. And those niches were, you'd go down there and all the lowriders would park together. All the hot rods would park. All the lifted, dent side Fords would park together.
But the car love came naturally. Your dad? Your parents?
You're talking about my origin story. My dad definitely. Accidentally, my dad was very wealthy. He invented valet parking of all things.
So you said that. What is that? Seriously, is that for real?
That's a for real story. My father and Herb Citron invented a company called Valet Parking, and the V has little dots. It's almost like a valet with a tuxedo and everything. And they said, when you go to a nice restaurant, what if they go, the parking lot is right there, but it gives you a sense of arrival. And you open the door, and you're coming into a
VIP. So
no,
for real?
For real. My dad invented valet parking
is that in
Los Angeles. Yeah, their very first account was Laurie's Prime Rib. And that's
just valeted there.
And and they.
How do you invent? But then it's just easy to rip off, right? Or no?
Oh yeah. This was before I was born in '68. This is before me. This is like mid '60s. Yeah.
So then what? So then this company that they created.
They have guys.
There's no patent pending on it or anything. But they were the first to do valet parking. And it was called Valet Parking Incorporated.
But it was probably they just had valets they would send to various restaurants around LA.
Well, they started with the one, and then when it started to take off, then they're like, we need to hire more people, and here you have to have a driver's license and go through this process. And
we should have done this in the back room of Lowry's.
Oh my God, amazing! Yeah, my mom was a waitress at Lowry's.
No way.
So she, that's how my dad and my mom met.
Lowry's is like the home of prime rib.
Prime rib,
It's still good.
That's not BS. My bio, my dad invented valet parking, and he was wealthy back in the day, so he'd take his family, my father's family in Iran was very wealthy. Since it's scattered to the winds at this point, but back then he had money
around 79.
Yeah, exactly. It was suitcases full of cash out of the country, sort of thing. But my dad made his own mark. My uncle too. My uncle just recently passed away.
Yes,
he was a
very famous
JPL space exploration pioneer. So, but my father and my uncle made their own way, and my dad made it with valet parking, and my uncle made it through space exploration. But back then, my dad had money, and he would take us skiing, and we'd go to Lake Tahoe. Mm-hmm. And we'd drive up to Lake Tahoe in an AMC Eagle, of all things. That was the car that you got. He was a Mercedes guy, but an AMC Eagle.
Gets you through the snow.
We'd drive up in the Eagle, and when we go there, I just fell in love with the dent side trucks that were sort of lifted. And I'm like, those are so cool. I just loved the patina. They look angry. Some of them had snow plows on the front of them. I'm like this. And so I started reading Peterson's Four Wheel and Off-Road, Peterson publication. Was reading it, and I saw Bob Chandler sitting in what was Bigfoot 1, parked on top of two cars, and I was like,
I remember that issue.
Yes, that is everything I love about, oh my God, as a little kid, it was like the best thing. And I told my dad, I want to do this. And he bought an old 73 F-250, and he said, we're going to build it together. We didn't build it. We commissioned a bunch of shops to do it. And I picked the color of the paint and Western Wheel Cyclones and Rancho RS 5000s on it. And when I wanted to get a car, I said, I want to get a Ford pickup. But I got into BMX racing, and all the cool BMX kids had Hawaiian-style trucks, like the lifted Toyota Hiluxes on 31-inch wheels, or slammed mini trucks.
Right.
And you needed a pickup to haul your, and I'm like, oh, I like that better than the Ford. And when the first years that when I rode my bike to Van Nuys, to the cruise nights on Saturday nights. I'd go to Van Nuys Boulevard and I'd look at Freiberger's crew would be there. I didn't know if it was Freiberger or anything, but
Sure,
just the
sure.
hot rod guys,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I'm like, it looks like Matthew McConaughey in Dazed and Confused sort of thing. And I'm like, this guy looks like he'd shove my head in a locker. And then I look at the lowrider guys. I'm like, those guys will beat me up too. And the lifted truck guys, I'm like, don't think I'd fit in there. And then as I'm sitting on my little bike, some nerdy guy goes, nice bike, kid. And I turn around and there's guys with 510s, 240Zs. And I'm like,
Okay.
these are dorky people who look like me, kind of scrawny guys, all multicultural and everything. I'm like, what is this? That's a BMW 2002. What's this? That's an Alfa Romeo. That's a 510.
Well,
So,
you know-
so, hey, I have a first prepared
and that's
question.
when I fell in love with that.
those cars.
You know, yeah.
So I have a running theory.
Great answer.
Running theory that people who are really interested in cars later in their lives, they start with bicycles, and it's either BMX or I'm a little bit younger, but like I was super into mountain bikes. I used to read. I used to read Mountain Bike Action.
I did too.
like,
That
back
was
in the
my
day.
literary inspiration. The editor, Zapata Espinosa. I interviewed him, and he was also one of my literary inspirations.
I was all about
BMX and
stunt bikes. Like I had a Kuwahara.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like
the
jump
ET
around.
bike.
Freestyle,
Yeah,
you mean?
freestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You put what is a rotor on it? So you
It came with a rotor and pegs, front and rear pegs.
And I will also support that. I say most of the car people I know, Johnny, watches, bikes, guns, and
I think the gun stuff kind of came a little bit later, but yeah, definitely like all the
guns wasn't part of it, but
I'm not saying
skating.
for me,
I
but I'm
know.
saying there's a subsect.
Yeah,
of the,
yeah.
I know
the
someone's gonna
tuner
bring up
culture.
skateboarding. I think it's mostly bicycles, skaters, because skate and surf kind of go together. But I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know. I grew up skating. I mean,
Skateboard. I skated too, and
Yeah.
I still skate, but I feel like
You
skateboarding.
do?
Yeah, I know.
You're not worried about your wrists?
Oh my god, too. I go with my kid. I wear every form of protection now and everything. It's really embarrassing. I go to Venice and I do just in little bowls and everything.
I was telling this story the other day. I was just wandering around Los Feliz, and I wandered into a skate shop, and they had like a Rob Roscoff.
Oh my
which,
god,
like,
screaming hand.
And they only had the 5. My dream in life was to have a Rob Roscoff 2. That's the shield with the arm sticking out. But anyways, I'm like, you know what? I can actually afford this because I had like a Ninja or something totally lame from Kmart.
Ninja, dude, that's
From Kmart.
Oh
It was
yeah,
so
the
bad.
rising sun on it. Totally
Yeah,
not
was so
PC.
bad.
So I bought it. I got tracker trucks.
Oh yeah,
and I forget the
Independence till
bearings.
I die.
Yeah, tracker maybe.
Yeah.
But I got like I forget the bearings, but like that.
Oh, the Swiss bearings.
Swiss bearings.
Yeah, Swiss bearings.
And I wanted Hosoi
Bones
rocket wheels, but
and-
they're out
yeah.
of production. So I got some other. Anyhow, and I put this thing together, or whatever. I brought it home, I jump on it, and I fell. And like then I'm like,
hang that up.
my wrist really hurts.
I'll take mine. Mine's my grocery getter now. I'll
Okay.
skate back. I could still barely ollie up onto a curb.
So
That's
that's still impressive. What did you take your driver's test in?
Oh
car?
boy! So yeah, that was a 1984 Camaro RS.
Whoa.
Yeah, my mom bought it. It was the
That's a
coolest car
V6.
ever. It was a V6, which I was so bummed because I'm like, you should have got the Z28, Mom.
yeah.
But everyone, like the younger kids, when I was like one of the oldest in my grade, I turned in May, so I got my driver's license at the end of 10th.
End of sophomore year.
End of sophomore year.
That's
So
the
I
same
was-
as me.
Yeah, so I was a little early. So you usually get it like early
Yeah.
11th. So I was a summer ahead, I believe. And so I got my car. I got it first, and my mom would let me take the car. And all the younger kids would go, "Oh my God, is that a Camaro?" And the kids who drove, the older kids were like, "Should have got the Z28."
Yeah,
you know
of
what? I'm
course.
like,
Yeah,
I get
yeah.
it. I get it. you
But
know?
remember, there was also that gen. So this is the 3rd gen Camaro.
Yes.
There was a Iron Duke 4-cylinder. So
Oh yeah.
and that's
exactly.
a
I didn't know
3.8
that.
liter.
It was an
V6.
automatic. It was a slush box and everything. But I got to
stop
drive in that. Yeah.
So, rich kid. Is your mom also?
Well,
is she ever
hang
in
on.
it?
Rich Kid and Camaro RS is not.
No. My
Camaro
mom
RS
and dad
is very
got
cheap.
divorced.
Yeah.
So my entire family, me included, twice divorced.
wow.
My whole family, everyone's divorced. We're all a
okay.
hot mess. So my mom and dad got divorced. And my mom had an affair with the pool man. Married the pool man. They had a good life and everything. He's the one who taught me how to drive a stick shift and everything. So
Wow.
like a
Once Upon a Time in LA.
different weird father figure to me, like a dichotomy to my dad.
Okay.
And my dad had his own thing, and my stepfather and my mom had their own thing. So my dad and I think we maybe weren't talking at the time. He built me a crazy Bronco. He lost all his money in '87. So I went from wealth to no wealth, which I will argue is harder than dragging yourself up from no wealth because. Man, when you start with money and they take it away from you,
My family went through that when I was about 12. That's
it's a
pretty
tough one. I
rough.
was
It's pretty
18 in
rough.
first year of university and had to pay my own way and had to pull
Where'd you go?
myself up. I started in San Diego State and I finished at Cal State Northridge because that's why I couldn't afford to live. I had to move back in with my mom and
Where'd you learn to
Finish
write? because you write really well. John was being very complimentary, but John himself is good.
High school, I think high school, and then I knew, I was racing bikes and I was racing mountain bikes and doing triathlons in San Diego, and I just wanted to do something in that area. And so mountain bike action, I wanted to be a professional mountain biker, and it never materialized. But the one person I talked to, I interviewed because I was just a fan of him. Zabata Espinosa was the editor of Mountain Bike Action for a college thing I was in communications because they didn't have journalism back then. I was in communications. And they said for a project, interview someone who works in the industry. And Mountain Bike Action was also in the San Fernando Valley. Yeah. So I somehow sent him an email, and he returned it and said, yeah, come on in. And I interviewed him. And he said, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to write, And he said, but you need to learn how to take pictures too. So from there, I worked on crafting my writing and my photography. He goes, because if you want to tell a story, you have to be able to tell it from both perspectives. And then since then, I've just been, consumed with just communicating.
But that's what I was going to say. Like, I think not everyone, but almost everyone who's a very good writer, they're very good storytellers, and they just figure out a way to turn that into the written word.
Exactly. Because Matt Farah, I never thought of him as an amazing writer, but now later in life, like his stuff in Road and Track is.
He's good. Yeah.
Very good. But he's a great storyteller.
I worked there for a year.
I know.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, you have to be able to, like, hold an audience's attention at a dinner party before you can, like, tell a great story in a magazine or on a website.
All great writers are great rackaunteurs as well.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, maybe. All right. So you did. So we covered a little bit of your post college. You did max speed in '98, then overboost. I texted a buddy of mine to see.
Boy.
I texted my guys. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Jackie and Preston said, when did you meet?
UrbanRacer.com.
UrbanRacer.com out of New York City.
I love Jackie.
I said, when did you meet Naderi? And when did you know of Overboost? And he said 98.
Yeah.
And Overboost in probably 99 or 2000. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. So there's some old school cats.
I got a job at what was called Max Speed. It was an offshoot of Super Street, and it was to try to attract the European cars. So it was like Volkswagen Golf, Audi A4, BMW 3 Series. Because you started to see people, the Fast and Furious hadn't come out then, but people were like, some people had a little bit more money, and they wanted a little bit of a nicer car. Lexus and Infiniti, we slotted those in the GS 300 and everything. And so I sent letter after letter to all the mountain bike publications, the BMX publications, MotorTrend, everything, rejection. Back when you had to send physical letters.
Sure.
And I had my template that I'd write, I'd send, put the stamp on it, and just keep sending them. Would get a bunch of rejections, sometimes no reply. Nosek ends up giving me a call. Donald Nosek, he was the editor of Max Speed. He goes, I don't know, I need somebody, you want to come in for an interview.
Can you
breathe? Yeah, can you? Yeah. And I said, came in, and he goes, I like you. You don't look like a serial killer or something, which is debatable.
Right.
And I said, yeah. I said, I'd love it. $27,000 a year. And do you have a cell phone? No. Go get a cell phone. Nokia 5150 brick. Got my first cell phone. Got my job. Super excited. Get there. The first assignment he gives me, he goes, write something good about these tires. And I'm like, oh, I tried those tires. Those tires aren't very good. He goes, I don't care. They're an advertiser. Right then, my journalistic integrity just shattered. But Donald gave me a chance, and I was shooting with a famous photographer named Fernando Escobar. He shot all our covers. And he's like, how'd you get this job, man? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, there was like dozens of applicants. And for some reason, he picked you. So I owe everything to him.
Oh,
he's the one who got me and I rewarded him. He ended up leaving. And I worked as like the de facto editor for a little while. They didn't pay you, but they sort of made you do the job. And there was a guy that was working in IT, and he goes, hey, man, we really like you. We like everything that you do. We'd like to bring you on board. We have a website that we're doing. I'm like, what's a website? What do you mean, a car? Is there such a thing as a car website? I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, yeah, we're gonna go big with this. And they had funding. A guy named Peter Frommer was doing the funding, and they go, we could pay double what you're getting here. And I'm like, yes,
double,
sold.
Yeah.
So I left, and we took it from 25,000 unique visitors to 350,000 over the year and a half that I was there. And I was just maniacal about it. I'm like, you need to send me here. I need to go here. And I was like posting like the Naira events, the D1 events. And then I went to Japan, and they said, okay, we'll go to Japan. Let's go out to dinner afterward. I'm like, no, we're not going out to dinner. They go, what do you mean? I'm like, we're going back to the hotel room. And then they go, the connection is too slow. I don't care. And they go, oh, we know of an internet cafe. I'm like, what's an internet cafe? We went to an internet cafe. Everybody else is partying after Tokyo Auto Salon, after the day is over.
As you do.
We're running to the internet cafe and uploading all of our pictures and everything from the show. With I would
that's a huge advantage.
Oh yeah, I was a journalist first and foremost. I'm like,
mover.
I want to get this out first, and I had crazy exclusives.
So
I got
it's
with
your fault because like the
we
the
pushed
2 years.
so hard. I had new car reviews in there. I still had some connections that I built at Peterson and Max Speed. I'm like, oh, the guy from Lincoln PR, will you let us drive this ridiculous little Mercury or whatever?
Well, I'm saying it's your fault because for the 2 years I was in the Autoblog boot camp, when we would do car shows,
you had to get back
12 posts a day. No, 12. We'd literally publish each individual.
I remember that.
Each human, and there'd be like 10 of us.
Yep.
And it was just madness.
Yep.
And that was
The game changer was digital when digital photography came
Oh my
out,
God.
and those first cameras.
That was another thing. I
D30.
shot Nikons back then. I since saw the light and switched to Canon. And I was shooting with my camera, and I had a big film camera and a big long lens and everything. And they said, okay, let's do this. And I'm like, I have a question. How do you get the slides onto the computer? And they said, what do you mean? And I said, no. I said, they go, well, you can't use that camera. And I'm like, oh, I got to use this camera. This is my moneymaker, And they go, no, here's your camera. And they gave me what was called a Coolpix 900. It was this old Canon camera with swiveled, display. And I would shoot motorsports with it. Yokohama would invite me out to Infineon, and I would go out there, and I'm trying. It's like the cars were. I'm trying to do a pan blur of these cars.
Get, like light blurs.
It's just nothing, And I'm like, darn it, just trying to shoot it and everything. And like Bill Oberlin's dad is next to me shooting with like a 600. I'm like, okay, buddy, And I'm like, can you email those to me? He goes, what's email? And I'm like, never mind. I'm like, I'll figure out a way to.
It's funny because I remember we used to go to SEMA early 2000s pre-digital photography, and everybody was carrying a tripod. You'd have a giant bag, a tripod, and you'd be shooting slide film. Which indoors shooting slide film, you had to you were bracketing. So you take a roll of 36, and if you're shooting a product,
you get 12 photos.
Yeah, you might get 12 photos of 12 because you had to bracket from like -2 to +2, and then so you get 5 photos of the same thing, and one of those
too dark, blown out. Oh, here it is,
right. And then
my Goldilocks.
I would come back to the office with a Ziploc bag full of, and this is pricey, but they were like, I was like, this is crazy.
They would get so mad at me at Peterson. They go, you get 3 rolls for a feature. And I would have to beg the photo people can I get 5, please? So like.
But I remember when we switched to digital, because I was still on mostly print publications, but my buddy Jackie at Urban Racer, they'd be like, hey man, we're not going to Tokyo. You want to send me some photos?
Oh,
so
nice.
I can tell people this now. But I would be like, yeah, okay. And then I had a pseudonym for them.
Oh, yeah. Eric Shen.
Hey.
I never got that. I was so late to that joke. Eric Shen.
There we go. Anyway, so let's because I want to come back to you. And by the way, we are over an hour in, and we haven't talked anything about electric cars, which is fine.
I have more questions than I have.
No. But this is a very interesting. This is where I want to, especially the haters who are like, get to the electric cars, you idiots, on YouTube.
That one
guy.
Yeah,
exactly. Because we've talked a lot about Freiberger. We've talked about we're talking to John. We've talked about video. There's a really unique story here that I'm trying to get John to write for us, maybe to talk about himself. And he is not just sort of a godfather in automotive publishing in the tuner space in particular, but honestly, if you think about it, you kind of owe your YouTube popularity to David Freiberger and a little bit to Naderi, because me and
David started doing YouTube the same day.
Hang on. I know. I'm talking about what came before YouTube.
Oh, right.
So when John left, I guess it was Prime Media at the time.
Prime Media, yep.
Yep. When he left Super Street, there was a guy named Craig Reese. He was our creative director there. Yes, he was. Craig Reese, drinking bourbon every day.
Yep. Actually, Kettle One.
Kettle One. Oh yeah. And
I know that tells you a lot,
that's
John.
Tough.
That tells you a lot.
Tough.
Craig, David, Freiberger, and John all left, and they launched
Craig Reese Media.
Basically, video on the internet, like about 2 years too early.
Oh, way too early.
you did Rice Boy TV.
Yes.
And I always forget what David.
Car Junkie.
Car Junkie TV.
Car Junkie.
Okay.
Right,
so these were Car Junkie TV was basically pre-Roadkill. It was Roadkill before Roadkill.
It was basically Roadkill. Yeah.
Yes.
That was exactly it.
Rice
And Chad Reynolds.
Yep.
Oh right. Yeah.
And Rice Boy TV was kind of like the reimagining of sort of the last the hot era of both Super Street and Importuner, because you had models.
We had models,
you had Ricky Chu, you had hijinks and cool cars and foam parties and that kind of stuff, and that lasted about 18
about
months?
a year, about 18 months. Yeah. We went to August. I was hire number 1. We went to August 2007. I was pushing Peterson Prime Media to say, we need to get into the digital space. I did this also in '99 when I first left to Overboost. We need to get internet. I need to figure out a way to get us. We can't. Less people will buy our magazines. I'm like, it's
inevitable.
You ready? It's inevitable that the internet is gonna be a thing. And I was very, very bullish about it. And they said, just shut up about it. Our moneymaker is print magazines. I'm like, we could accentuate each other. It's a multi-platform approach, and they didn't want to do it. So I left to do Overboost. They brought me back to do Super. I was still hungry for it, and the website was so short-sighted. It was such an afterthought. And Craig just came to me and he goes, "God, you've been shouting from the rooftops about this internet. What would you do if you had funding?" And I laid out over drinks one night, of course, because it's Craig Reese. I laid out a business plan.
The office on Wilshire, 6420 Wilshire Boulevard, Craig would walk down to
STK, the steakhouse. Yeah.
And
we would do.
Have a couple
They actually had in martini glasses these crisp strips of bacon that I would do. I would do a goose dry and dirty martini with a bacon strip, and it was just the best thing ever. And
technically, you shouldn't be allowed to call it a martini without gin, but I hear what you're saying.
I'm a vodka martini guy.
Gross
yes.
vodka. Okay. Bacon infused vodka.
So he said, "What would you do?" I said, "I'd do this." And he goes, "Who would you take with you?" And I'd say, "Well, if I had my druthers," and I. Sorry to say this, I said I'd take Ed Lowe. And he goes, "What about Angus?"
Big mistake.
He goes, sorry. And I said, I would take Ed for our OE side,
right?
And I'd take Freiberger and me, and then from there we'll build the rest. And he said, "Okay." And he said, "Can you get Freiberger?" And he tried to get Freiberger, and Freiberger wouldn't go. And then I was I had to go meet with Freiberger at where our offices were. And I met with David, and we were inside a car. It felt like something out of like an ab scam, like sort of set up. And I'm sitting there going, "You got to make this move." And he's like, "Well, I can't. I'm entrenched here."
He was the editor-in-chief of Hot Rod.
He was a group editorial director. Angus McKinsey, myself, and David were the 3 group editorial. I left at the top of my game, and I'm like, he goes, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm taking a chance. We have to do this." And I got him to make the move. I'm like, "What's the worst that could happen?" I'm like, "You go back. They'll take you back. Your legacy."
Right.
You know, David got to go back. I chose not to. I'm like, I kind of was scattered to the winds.
100% accurate though, because when they took off, everybody was like, "You what?" Like,
right.
I remember the aftermarket side did like Naderi left and Freiberger left, and they're like, "Oh,
yeah." It was. We had the funding, we had everything, and I tried to. The one thing that I'm not like the cheap guy that Ed is, but I have a poor person's mentality to where I'm like, I never know where my next meal is going to come from, no matter how flush I am, no matter how liquid I am. And I always worry about that. And I said, we need a runway. And they go, "Don't worry about that." I'm like, no, if our burn rate is too much. And I didn't know this was a thing back then, but now like this was the thing with every internet company. And they go, "Don't worry about it." They paid me a huge premium on my salary. I'm like, "Please don't. Give me shares and I'll take a cut." And they said, no, you deserve more. And I'm like, oh my God. They paid me like close to 2x what I was doing very well at Prime Media. And I said, "Please don't do this, because now you're making my hill to climb that much higher." Because I have to get over for a revenue thing. And that's why they loved me, because I thought not only but creatively, but I thought, how can we do something creative that will help make the company money?
So what happened to that?
I know in 2008, the VC funding just shut off.
So that was
abruptly. 2008, the financial crisis just.
And just contextually, this is 2007 when they left. YouTube was about 18 months old at the time, and it was as a startup.
Videos,
it was it wasn't even that. YouTube was started for dating. It was like
it was
a site where you could record videos yourself and send them.
That was
to
the
somebody.
original thing. But it was the same way that Amazon was started to sell books.
Right.
You know, they kind of knew there was something else there, but they didn't know what that was yet.
But
well, 2008 was. I mean, it was crazy what it did to this industry. Because I don't think you know this. I was, oh God, I can't remember his stuff. Phil at Automobile. I'm blanking on his last name. Anyways, it was looking like I was going to get a job at Automobile. and I remember it was going to start.
David E. Davis Jr.,
It was going to
man.
start in December, and it seemed like a really good fit. And I remember at the LA Auto Show in November, I saw whoever, and they're like, "That job's gone." They're like, "That's just
Hiring
that's,
freeze.
that's just not."
Yeah, that
happening
was
in
that was
2008.
everyone
Yeah.
tightened their belts there.
Yeah, I
So
don't.
went
Yeah,
through that.
So the interesting thing is that then subsequently, after the financial crisis and this thing blows over, Freiberger came back, and then Angus, we started to do YouTube videos, 2008, 9-ish, and
Yeah.
we got, it was a lot, again, similar mentality. You know, we had the overlords saying like, "Why are you this? We don't own this platform. You want to you want to pay good money to create this content and put it on a platform
That we don't own. Exactly.
For what
exactly.
reason exactly?" And I remember our guy at the time, one of our guys, Jim Gleason, we were testing out of Fontana. We had a BMW M5, and we did some sick like just quarter-mile run. He said, "Let's just see what happens." And he like overnight he got 15,000 views or something. And he's like, "Oh, dude, I'm gonna get fired." But thankfully, before I think I told Angus, or one of us told Angus, and Angus was like, "Right, we got something here, right?"
Yeah.
So then we started to go down that path, and I told you this, you know, again, there's always been a hole in our programming from a tuner perspective, but Freiberger got on board the YouTube train, I think, really early because he saw from Car Junkie what was
potential.
possible
Yep.
if you had like the pipeline or the
Right.
platform.
And
which we
David,
did.
really smarter than everybody in the room, and Finnegan took advantage of social media.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
I went back and because I was like, well, mine never took off, and I went and they're like, follow us on Instagram
Yes, yep.
in their Roadkill
Yep,
episode.
yep.
Which is what we should do actually with this. Like follow Johnny Lieberman on Instagram.
Yeah, follow John Naderi on Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah, and Ed Low,
Low down.
at Lowdown.
Anyways.
But you know what I mean? Like they were savvy and super. And so
yeah.
when we left YouTube, and this was affected me pretty big. I didn't have a ton of followers because when Instagram started, we were working on MotorTrend.
Yes.
I was putting like my wife or whatever on my personal Instagram.
Yep, exactly.
And we were building up MotorTrend, but Freiberger and Finnegan very smartly have been building up Freiberger and Finnegan.
Yep.
So when it was like time to leave
merch.
YouTube, they brought a lot of people where I had like 20,000 followers at the time, It wasn't that big. So yeah, anyways, they're very savvy.
Anyways,
Very
that's
savvy.
the origin story of automotive, internet,
All of it.
video. Sort of. I mean, I know Fastlane Daily was actually probably the first. I think they were the first.
Fastlane was Emil. That was
Yeah,
Emil
that was
Rensing.
Emil, yeah,
And Garage
yeah.
419 was simultaneous. That was Farah. But real quick, I got to tell this story. I remember when I was first getting in the biz. This is probably like 2006, something like that. I got in 5, but it was 2006. I went to like the Mustang launch, which I'll tell you a great story about this off the air. But I was at the Mustang launch in Detroit, and I remember like going down to breakfast, and nobody knew me. I didn't know anybody, and I just sat at a table, bunch of old dudes, and literally the topic of conversation is like, man, I can't wait till this internet fad's over and we can get back to looking at like pictures of cars and magazines. I don't want to see a damn car on my computer screen. And I'm like, you're all dead. I'm like, just thinking to myself, like, you're all gonna die. Like, you have no future. Which some kids are probably saying, listening to this right now and be like, these three are real dinosaurs.
Oh, yeah. Like,
You're not on Snapchat?
Exactly.
not TikTok.
Whatever.
Yeah. So, subsequent to all of this, though, and then before Super Street Garage, you've been a lot of places, but the big one that I think people know you from is you did 2 stints at Hoonigan.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you doing?
Well,
round one. What? Round 2.
I've
what?
known Ken Block longer than anybody else really in the space. He came to an event I was producing. There was a gentleman named Ken Takahashi who was a D1 Grand Prix U.S. Formula Drift judge, and he wanted to do something. He's like, I want to do Gymkhana, and I'm like, what's Gymkhana? And he goes, it's like. It's hard to explain. It's like an autocross they do in Japan. And he showed me some like real early videos.
With horses.
Yeah, there's horses too. There's barrel racing with horses as well. But in Japan they do it. It's like an autocross course, but there's literally 2 cones on the entire course. And you watch this kid in a little Civic do the same maneuver that every other kid did. And I'm like, how do they know which way the course goes? And he goes, I'm not going to do mine like that. So he did like basically an autocross with like a little parking brake box and everything. And we brought a couple cars out and we promoted it on Super Street. And someone had left, I credit to Rich Chang or someone, DC Shoes, I was on the mailing list, and they left me a book called Agents of Change.
I have that book. That's a great
It's
book.
an amazing book.
Yeah.
And I read the book cover to cover, you know, and I'm like just like absorbed in the book. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy's a master marketer. And Ken was always like the guy behind the scenes. Damon Way was his partner. Damon and Danny Way were the partners. And they were the ones who were jumping over the bridge of, you know, the Great Wall of China and everything on their skateboards and everything, jumping out of helicopters and everything. And Ken was there quietly in the background, just the guy. He's like, I don't care. I just want to design cool stuff.
And that's the funny thing that no one knows. Like if
Ken's
was quiet.
notoriously shy.
I mean, the last time I saw him, we had dinner, and he just sort of like sat there.
Does not suffer people well. Did not suffer.
But
people
he was,
well.
you know, he was just really.
He just
quiet.
wanted to go fast. So he shows up, and I'm like, "You're Ken Block," and he goes, "How do you know me?" And I'm like, "I read your book," and he goes, "Oh," he goes, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm, you know, helping this." And he goes, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I'm the editor of a magazine." He goes, "What magazine?" I go, "Super Street." He goes, "Oh, okay." So he invites me to a Subaru thing. He goes on the Gumball Rally. He starts showing some speed, goes to like Tim O'Neill rally school, gets really fast, goes to do a couple rallies, goes, "I like this." And at 35 years old, which that's impossible to become a top rally driver. You have to be a 5-year-old kid from Finland that's been driving a tractor on the ice for your entire life before you really get fast. And he somehow like read it. He was a motocross racer and a snowboarder, and I think he.
But you know why?
Pastrana did the same thing. They kind of figured
never
it out.
stopped working. I mean, the one day I spent working with Ken, like. You know, normally when they yell "cut," I'm like on my phone. I'm doing anything but paying attention.
And he's studying.
He doesn't get out of the car. He just keeps
still
going.
driving,
he's practicing while they're setting up lenses,
constantly,
which is unusual.
He was addicted to it, and
I met him in 2006. We went Subaru Dom Infante.
Oh yeah, Dominic.
Subaru,
Yep.
Invited us down to the Mexico WRC race.
Oh yeah,
in Guanajuato. It was just
that's
me.
when he was making his ill-fated WRC bid.
This was the year before he did it. So he was going on. He was
on like a recce run.
He was trying to understand
it
because he entered as PWRC, the production WRC.
Yep.
And he was with his wife, who was pregnant at the time.
Wow!
And we were watching.
Back,
We were watching
Lucy.
Lucy was pregnant, and we were watching
Petter Solberg
driving, and Petter's son was in the pit.
Yes, Oliver.
And somewhere I have a CD I burned of all these images, and I cannot find them.
Oh my God!
I have pictures of him.
By the way,
little Oliver Solberg was like the biggest Ken Block fan back in the day, and then all of a sudden he's racing.
And by the way, that child in Ken's wife is now racing a Pikes Peak.
Oh yeah,
in 2 days.
Leah. Yeah, she's doing a demonstration run in the Hoona Pegasus,
Yeah.
which is the Porsche that Batim at BBI built.
Yeah,
which
had a bad year.
Yeah, it did have a bad year last year, and sadly, so they never really got to push it.
Yeah.
So you've had a long relationship with Ken Block of Hoonigan, who launched Hoonigan.
So I introduced him to Gymkhana essentially. Right. So I said, "Here, you know," he's like, "I came out. I want to use this to practice." So then he goes, "Well, what are you doing now?" And I'm like, "Still doing Super Street." We kept in touch, and then when I left to do the YouTube thing, he was like one of my first calls. He called me and said, "Hey, can you come down? I want to talk to you about your thing. You know, I love this." And I came down, talked to him, and he goes, Why are there no who does clips? Who does clips? You know, who's doing parts?" And I'm like, "What's a part?" And he goes, "Like a skate part." I'm like, "What's a skate part? Like a truck or a wheel?" And he goes, "No, like a video part." And I'm like, "What's a video part?" He goes, "Don't you know, like when you put a CD into a magazine, into Thrasher magazine, and somebody did a skate part, like, you know, someone will do like," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I'm like, "Wow, no one does that for cars." He goes, I want to do something like that." I'm like, "Cool." I'm like, "That sounds stupid, you know?" And he goes, "What about brands? What about like clothing brands or streetwear brands?" I'm like, "There's no streetwear brands. If you like Volk Racing, you wear a Volk Racing T-shirt. If you like Hooker Headers, you wear a
you're getting a shop. You're getting like a shop.
A
jacket,
shop. Yeah, you don't. No one does. Like if you wear like a
outbound
57 Chevy with step and repeat on a Hawaiian shirt or something like that, I go, that's not our vibe. And he goes, "Well, that's a shame too, you know." And I remembered those words, you know. And then he said, "Well," he goes, "I'll sponsor you." So he was one of our first advertisers, DC, and we did a bunch of stuff with Vaughn Gittin and everything. And he goes, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "I want to do the ultimate lap around Formula One, Formula D, the Irwindale Speedway. It's called the House of Drift. Jared Deanda named it that." And all the Falcon cars back then, Falcon had these, you know, Chris Forsberg, Tony Angelo. Shout out to Tony Angelo, former MotorTrend host. Which I also connected Tony with the job here. He said, "Do you know anybody here?" And I connected him with some of the producers and everything. And the rest is that history. And
Vaughn did Falcon too, right?
Yeah, Vaughn was on Falcon. Chris Forsberg, Ryan Truck,
they
were the teal and blue. The teal and blue. And I said, "I want to do them running a train." And a friend of mine has what's called a drone. And it was Craig Lieberman of all people that started getting into drone video. And he goes, "What's
Oh,
a
yeah,
drone?"
he
And I'm
was
like,
early
"He
in
will
that. Yeah,
follow the
yeah.
car. It's like a helicopter, but it's not a helicopter." And he's like, "Oh, I like this." And there's a new product out called GoPro that you could mount them inside the car and get like, if
Yeah,
they're wearing
yeah,
DC
yeah.
shoes, Ken. He's like, "That's really cool, but does it have to be drifting?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it has to be drifting." He's like, "What if you did it with a rally car?" And I'm like, "A rally car? That's lame." And he goes, "You don't want to film that?" And I said, "No." And I turned him down, and he got with Matt Martelli and them, and they filmed Gymkhana practice. The rest is history.
Excellent.
Then I started doing Time Attack, and I was
Right.
doing Global Time Attack at the time, and they go, we know you've done Gymkhana. Could you do a Gymkhana event?" And I said, "Sure. Yeah, I could help with that." And they go, "Could you do it at the X Games?" And I'm like, "Oh, God, no," you know? And they go, "It's going to be live and it's going to be the very first time." And I'm like, "No, absolutely not." And Brian Scotto brought me on. He goes, "It's in 52 days. We have no one else. We need you. Name your price." I name an exorbitant price. They pay me the exorbitant price. And I said, "This is going to fail. You realize this, and you're going to put me in bad with Ken and everything else." And he goes, "Yeah, you're basically our suicide bomber. So if you could figure out how to get the vest off, leave it behind, and get out of this place, you got a job." So I did the job, and it came off without a hitch. We did the very first Gymkhana event at X Games, and
Right.
Ken had done a couple videos by then, and San Francisco had taken off and everything else. And then they said, "You want to stay for a job?" And I stayed for a little bit, and they didn't pay me that well. And Saatchi came calling to do advertising with Toyota, which was a terrible job, but it paid
They
so
paid a
well.
lot of
So I'm
money.
like, you know
Yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah.
I'll go do this. And they when they approached me, they said, "We want you to do Gymkhana films." And I said, "Amazing." And I ended up
For
writing
Toyota?
Prius brochures for
Yeah,
Toyota.
sure,
You
of
know, I
course.
Same,
really came in
totally
there
same.
thinking I was going to
Yeah,
do it.
yeah.
And then Scotto called me back in 2017 and said, "Come back now, the YouTube thing." I helped them do like unboxing videos, which is like daily content and everything. That Scotto and I are watching these videos, and he's like, I'm showing him, I'm like, "There's a kid on YouTube. It's called an unboxing video." He goes, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's called Ryan Plays now." Yeah. And I'm like, he just opens up these Legos and talks about him. He's this adorable little
gets
kid.
excited
And he
and-
goes, "You want us to unbox Legos?" I'm like, "No, we unbox a car.
Yeah,
Every
yeah,
day
yeah.
we do a friend's car, have him come by and do a burnout." And then while I'm at Saatchi, I'm watching him, I'm texting Scotto going, "Holy cow, you're doing it. You're doing it," you know? And they're going, "Hey, we're going to do content every single day." And it was funny when I got there, Ken wanted nothing to do with it. He's like, "I make 20 million, 300 million view videos."
Right.
He goes, "Why would I come on your little, you guys?" And we started getting 100,000 views in 24 hours. Then we tried to get 200,000 views in 24 hours. And then Ken goes, "Hey, get everything ready. I'm coming down on Friday." Because he knew, like, he's like,
Right,
"Okay."
right.
And then the Ken Block bump helped us, and all ships rose and everything like that. And it was a fun time. The company's since been sold to Wheel Pros, and
Right.
they're still sort of finding their way and everything. Wish them the best.
It's
and everything,
hard. It's
It's
for
hard
those
without Ken. Yeah.
for those
but-
watching
Yeah,
us.
and Ken
Yeah.
too. That's yeah.
For those
I don't
watching
like
us
talking
on
about
YouTube, you're welcome. I hope it's worth what you paid for.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
But
that too.
that is also the
That too.
problem with the model. Like everybody's like,
Yeah.
"Why doesn't MotorTrend have more content on YouTube?" Like as a platform, if it was just the three of us doing stuff,
We could do
we'd
it.
be like, we'd be
Again, Johnny and I were
rolling.
talking about that off camera before. Like, I mean, shout out to like the TJ Hunts, Amelia Hartford, Cletus McFarland.
Yeah.
You know, all those guys, Rob Dom, you know, B is for Build, you know, it's like
But everybody
Rich
who
Build, like
everybody
all
who
those,
gets to a certain size,
one person, one camera guy or girl, like they just do it.
you
and
get
then
you
they-
get past like 8 to 12 people. It's
there's a
really
bloat.
it's really hard to scale.
Yeah,
It's
and
tough to
then
scale.
and remember they can. There's no contract. Like YouTube can reprogram.
You don't own any of it.
Yeah, and like I forget the exact numbers, but we went from it being a viable business model when we had 10 shows on YouTube to we all got hauled into a room. And they're like, so we made, we served 27 billion videos last year, and we made $358,000. And they're looking at me, and they're like, your show's about 100,000 an episode to make.
Yeah.
And all of us together made 300. So we're leaving YouTube, because everyone's like, we can't leave YouTube. And they're like, there's literally no money. Like, can't happen.
So you're telling me I'm not going to have a show because I spent $100,000 on a
yeah,
Civic?
yeah.
Which, by the way, not to segue us, but I've taken that car and I've decontented everything on it. I took the power steering off of it. I took the air conditioning off of it. I took the interior out of it, and I'm bringing it back to its golden roots because I feel like these are the last cars. Get ready, Ed, because what we're happening right now is like Octane is going away, and it's inevitable.
So,
So let's talk about that.
do
Let's talk-
you
let's talk-
feel?
Yeah, let's talk
Yes.
about that.
How do you feel?
Hang on. I feel like we have at this point established a little bit of John's credibility
I mean,
in the space.
who is he again?
Exactly. So you know all about tuning for young people, for the tuner, the JDM space. You've covered a lot about your history. you're hosting a show. The show though is really about internal combustion foreign cars, mostly turbochargers. We're in this moment though. EVs have arrived, and you told us in the bio you sent almost little to no experience with EVs.
Very little.
Never plugged an EV into a charger.
Never.
Wow.
You've only driven one EV, which was from EV West.
EV West. It was a Type 2 bus with a Tesla. Tesla swap.
That's a good conversion.
That's a good one. Yep. And you have launched in a Ludicrous.
I've ridden in a Ludicrous,
Okay.
which was a mind altering experience.
I remember that's slow by today's standards.
Yeah, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
But are you what team are you on? Are you it's coming? You're open to it. You're not into it. Like, and also, what have you seen? Because you still go out. You still go out to shows.
Of course,
there are kids out there. I mean, it's funny because most of the Tesla modifications I've seen, it's all from like guys we've had on like T Sport line or
track day
or
stuff.
Ben Schaefer's
Unplugged.
group.
Ben Schaefer, I'm a big fan. Old friend of Ben's.
And it's always suspension. They're always slammed. It might be airbags.
Well, you can't do anything with them. You can't unlock them. Yeah, no.
Right.
For me, like, okay, so many things. Like I said, I have little to no experience, but one thing, and I appreciate all the kudos, but one thing I hate more than anything, it's the throwback Thursday. 4 touchdowns in a single game. I'm doing the Ed O'Neill thing from back Married with Children back in the day. I don't like to look back. I always like to look ahead.
Right.
And for me, I mean, get ready, Ed, it's inevitable. I mean, we might as well start this rant with the Terminator intro where they're stepping on the skull, the T-1000. We know how this is going to end. Yeah. It's thermal, country club type thing. The little girl doesn't want a pony anymore. She wants a Miata because L5 automation has already there's absolutely no way we're going to be able to drive on these roads. It's, again, inevitable. And there's no way, I know Johnny hates that.
That's a dim view. That's a dim view.
It is, but I will say that this is the direction it's going. Like, you cannot have that intermediate autonomous, because once it gets to a point where interconnected highways are happening, you're having cars doing 150 bumper to bumper. And what was it? The Google car? I think Google was doing their autonomous testing.
Firefly.
It's been involved in like 20 accidents.
Oh, yeah.
Every single accident has been human error. It's been not the Google car. It's been someone not paying attention or texting. So it's the loose nut behind the wheel that is the problem. So it's the same thing when you get to, not to use another Terminator reference, it's like, what is the weak link in this? And it is humans. It's human driving. It's like everything about autonomous is better than what we are. So I think you're right. It is a dim view. Could there be something where, like L5, when I say L5, I'm sure the level 5, the full autonomy,
no
right?
Steering wheels.
Are we at L1 or L2 right now?
We're transitioning into L3.
L3
Mercedes
right now.
can now legally sell.
Has that one, yes. And I think Bosch is also promoting something that has like kind of an L3 plus, NA plus Ultra version where it could like, all the systems aren't siloed and they start to work together, which is very.
So Mercedes just like 2 weeks ago in California now can sell you a level 3 car, which means that, and also in Nevada, it means that Mercedes assumes the liability.
Yes.
Even though you're behind the steering wheel, they're driving.
Which is really scary because a lot of the people who could afford a Mercedes are not maybe necessarily the enthusiast that you want to be paying attention behind the wheel. Right. So they take it as to like, I could nap or answer emails.
But you can.
You can.
No,
can.
That's
but
what level 3 means.
It is.
Can.
But it's very scary. You need to still be behind the wheel.
Not really though. No. You don't. That's the difference. Level 3 means Mercedes has got it here. Will they try and wake you up if they want you to take the wheel?
Well, of course, yeah.
But unlike Tesla, which has no legal anything, it won't quit. It never will leave level 3 unless a human makes it leave.
Exactly. Exactly. Which is a little
Mercedes
little
has
daunting. I think Mercedes has that now. But so for me, I think if we do get to that L5, I know, Ed, I believe you're on the same page as me with this, is like where humans will be factored out of this equation. But I think that there could be that happy medium there where it'll be highway travel and trucks. And I think you guys also talked about on the show was like the big haulers, like, Tesla's starting to get into that market, and Pepsi and Frito-Lay. Or
trucking is going to be the first.
Is going to be the first one, right? And
it's funny that you jump right to the. I'm talking like this.
So I'm saying this is our future,
distant future.
But now what we talk about in this show is like, what is the 15 years from now? Where are we going? And for me as a tuner.
Right, so we're on the 11th generation of the Civic?
Yes,
12th,
we are.
11th?
Yeah.
Okay, so when the 13th one shows up and it's electric, Do you care?
I don't care about the current generation, to be honest.
Okay.
And I think it's an amazing car, but to me, it's no longer a Civic. It's an amazing front-wheel drive car. What does it do? A 7-minute lap around the Nürburgring? I mean, that is
Type R, yeah.
that's pretty. I'm talking about the Type R.
Yeah.
So there's the 10th
why don't you
generation
think
was
it's
the
a Civic?
was
Why-
the
why-
FK8.
Well, that's really interesting. Why don't you think
Well,
it's a Civic?
first of all, in ethos, if you look back to the original NSX and the original Civic and the original Integra, they looked like the standard Integra, standard NSX, and standard Civic. Thinner window glass, titanium uppers, titanium valves, very little modifications, the little baby Type R. There was no garishness about it, to where now the current Civic is very much a mecca of it. It's like a robo Civic. It's too overwrought for me, where it's like, okay, it shouts its intentions too loudly, where the original Type R ethos was like very much subdued.
Huh.
To me, it should look like an SI
Because
that's like
the new one is kind of
the new one. They did take it back a
I was
notch
gonna
because
say, it's
the
just-
previous generation, which is the FK8, that one was almost way too garish for everyone.
No.
And then the FL5, the current generation, I should know you drove.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear about it. I drove an FK8. I drove the previous generation, but
love
I haven't
that
driven
one.
this one. I do love that one, but I just feel like it's become too much. And also for me, I am, like, what is it, like the music that you listen to? Clearly, the way I dress is from like throwback to when you grew up.
So John's wearing a
oh my
Dead
God.
Kennedy shirt. And just to date us, I was listening to the Dead Kennedys at my job from Frankenchrist on the way over here, which is the irony that we're both Dead Kennedys fans. Doing this podcast in Beverly Hills is totally
Exactly.
lost on me. But anyways,
But
and
so I
Ed's
feel
like
like-
that's not Taylor Swift stuff talking about.
Yeah, I don't care. Okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like I also drove, and I don't have as much experience as you guys, but I also drove a first generation R35 2010 Nissan GTR.
Yeah, baby.
And that one, I drove, terrible driver,
Yeah.
by all means, and I drove against, at the current generation, a pretty fair driver in a, I want to say it was a 997 at the time. 997, it lasted the air cooled, I want to say it was. And it was,
No,
or was it 993 was the last of the GT. Yeah.
air-cooled.
So this
last
was
of the naturally aspirated.
last of the naturally aspirated and last of the
that
manual,
99-
the manual transmission,
997.1.
the 997.1.
They still have manuals, but anyways, last of
So
the.
I mean,
yeah.
they went to dual clutch for a little while, and then they reintroduced.
Oh, you're
the
talking about
manual.
GT3.
GT3 RS,
Okay, yeah,
GT3 RS. And so I was chasing a GT3 RS, doing everything wrong, and just the car was just
Oh, yeah.
allowing me to do it. It was
Oh,
so
I chased Justin Bell.
just. You guys have said famously too that these cars are too fast for the road and too fast for.
Well,
I'm a slow
I
car
haven't
fast
said
guy.
that. I haven't said that.
I love them. I know you're a big GT3 RS fan. I am too. But
I just
I
like-
feel like that is way too much car for the road. And I also feel like, but I feel like the R35, when it came out, it was so it detached you so much from the driving experience.
No.
because I'm a huge
Oh, it's such a-
manual
such a good
manual guy.
car.
I felt like you control it with the throttle, and it basically there was enough nannies that could allow a driver like my caliber to keep on the tail of the driver of the person.
I
that
need
was following
to say
in
this
a
because
997
I
GT3
hate
RS.
that narrative about the R35. When you turn those nannies off, which you can do,
You could do,
It's
yes.
a terrific car. They like Tomura-san nailed the brief.
But for
That
me,
car
right now,
is
we have
awesome.
an R32 GTR in our fleet that we're going to be building up for the show.
Right.
And driving around that car is also it's right-hand drive with a left-hand manual shifting. So that
Yep,
2-3
yep.
upshift
fun.
is, if you're not watching right now, that's tongue out of the mouth. Like, make sure I don't money shift as I go
Right.
2-3 instead of 2-1 because you're shifting with your non-dominant shifting hand. But to me, that car feels so much more. You feel so much more connected to the drive.
Oh, it's
You know?
smaller.
It's
lighter.
smaller. It's
I don't know.
nimble. It's
I'm-
and the motor only makes at this point 250 horsepower.
I
It's
won't
just,
allow anything negative to be said about the R35. But let me tell you a story.
Okay.
I had Tomura-san in my electric pickup truck, driving
Oh my goodness!
in my Rivian, and I was having dinner.
Tomura-san,
I was-
father of the GTR.
father of the GTR.
Yeah.
We're having dinner with him, and we went out to look at the truck. And he, can I drive? And of course,
But
you
yeah,
say
how do you
yes.
say no to him?
And it's pouring rain, and he's blasting down Venice Boulevard, 80 miles an hour, and he looks at me. He's like, "Oh."
Yep.
And I'm like, "Hey, you guys have had the Leaf. This should have been the 2022 Frontier." And he's like, "Ah," So
He's like, "What's a frontier?"
yeah, well, but no.
I live
So,
in Japan.
so that's my thing, though. See, just to get back to what you were saying, we can't even ban an assault rifle in this country. You think they're going to ban like cars that you drive?
Well, I'll be long dead by the time this happens.
Okay,
but I do
okay,
feel
okay.
like that's the inevitability of it all. Is that's the direction it will go. But I think it's going to be a fun ride to get there.
Okay.
And I think that there's still going to be, I mean, we're in an era now to me where there's Instagram handles the Manual Gearbox Preservation Society.
Sure,
and there's
sure.
I think right now we're going into 1% of all cars. I think it was 3%. The last number I heard are sold new with manual transmissions, and they'll be phased out by 26 or 27.
It blips up a little bit.
But for me, I feel like we're slowly becoming more detached from the driving experience, and then it'll eventually.
But I don't know. Like I still think some EVs, not all, just like some gas cars, not all. Some EVs are wonderful to drive, and it is a very involving experience. Like, and if you're like, well, it's got to have a manual. Well, you can go back further. I got to be able to retard my ignition time. Well, why not?
Carbs to electronic fuel
I've
injection,
driven a
bias
car
ply to radial, all of it. I know I'm anachronistic in my viewpoint.
I just remember I was giving a talk one time at the Peters. Not giving a talk. I was on a panel at the Peterson. I was talking to people, and there was a guy in a Shelby jacket, and he was just really agitated about EVs. And I remember I'm like, if a RAV4 is electric tomorrow, do you care? And he's like,
exactly.
Oh no. I go, okay. I'm like, no one's ever going to take your Shelby. Government's not going to come, and ACP was there, and I was like,
oh, nice.
Hey, Andrew, what'd you drive here in?
Like, 928.
No, Model T. What year? 1919. Okay, so that's still on the road. Or maybe it was 1912, whatever it was. And I'm like, sir, no one's taking your Shelby. You could buy 10 TRXs today if you had the money. Go ahead. You get 5 miles a gallon. Feel free. You're free to do this. It's just that there's going to be no incentive for an automaker to build a gasoline-powered car.
CAFE regulations, everything else
Just
going that direction.
But also, once battery prices come down, it's just cheaper and more profitable for GM to build an electric blob.
It's not even CAFE. I think the thing that everybody, because we get blamed, I keep saying this, we get blamed so much for like, you guys are pushing this agenda. I'm like, dude, we don't build the cars.
It's not, no, I was going to say, you guys are right. You guys are talking about kilowatt hours, the price of a car when it comes down, but it used to be close to 1,000. Now it's like almost hovering at 100, so when it drops beneath that magic $100, it's definitely like the cost is going to come down. But I mean, there's a lot of hurdles to get there too.
Think about
on the counterpoint to my point.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Think about
nothing's easy. Yeah.
Think about the simplicity of global. This is a global industry. Car manufacturers need to build these things for every country, every state, all the regulations, and when the things are zero emission from the factory to begin with, when it's a battery, it's a motor, the parts has gone down an order of magnitude.
Works in every country.
Works in every country.
Have to worry
period.
About diesel.
I will argue 2 points against that, against zero emission. We're still using coal-fired power plants to charge these vehicles. So now, our current hold on, let me finish.
19% of the power in the U.S. is coal-fired.
But we're still clinging to that. We're still clinging to that dependence. It is dropping. So I feel like solar, wind, nuclear even.
Yeah,
what is that? What is that? There's a Kansas grain belt wind farm that they're trying to build, and it's getting blocked by political lobbies at this point. So I'm like, we should all be adopting that a lot more. And there's also finite resources involved with building an EV, and that's the lithium. Right now, we have the battery technology needs to go and at the rate it's progressing, I'm sure we'll get there. But I hear Ford is like even investing in lithium mines now to in order to cover we're dealing with fossil fuels being a finite resource, but also the lithium that's in the current lithium-ion batteries is a finite resource as well.
But Toyota announced the other day that solid-state battery will be the next generation of cars.
But even the price is so high on them
they're
less explosive. I like that.
No lithium.
No lithium is a good thing.
We are so.
And by the way, battery. Come on, 121,000 car fires a year. 5 are Teslas, and
I know that's conflicting.
I feel
what's
like
explosive? Gasoline.
Yes,
it is definitely ground well covered in terms of the arguments for and against. The thing that I always come back to is arguing. It's not just that it's inevitable, but arguing against what is essentially progress is the part that does my head in, right?
Yeah,
because. Yes, okay, there's still a problem with coal-fired power plants right now, but if you think about just the technological improvements that have happened in this space in the last 10 to 15 years, it's insane. And if we stopped because of all the complaining we're hearing about people who just don't like EVs for whatever reason, then we won't go anywhere.
Oh, right? No, I'm not arguing to stop at all.
And if you look at, and I think the really good analog to look at is how far and how clean internal combustion engines are. I mean, you look at I know people like to joke about the Prius, but the Prius as a hybrid, the efficiency that the current generation generates, it's incredible. And that you can say what you want about government mandates and cafe and these kind of things, but they do push innovation. They make
100%.
They make manufacturers do crazy stuff they would not have done otherwise.
I will also. You guys are very much on board with Team EV, like battery electric and electric powered. I still think that there's a cause to be made for hydrogen. You know, Akio Toyota, they pushed it. They definitely went in the wrong direction.
It's good for cruise ships.
You know,
hydrogen,
synthetic fuels, hydrogen.
There's an infrastructure. There's definitely there's a chicken egg infrastructure thing too.
It's a jobs program.
It's sort of greenwashing for the petroleum industry. It's a way to get we need to burn something. That's all we do is burn things. Okay, burn this to create hydrogen, and then the hydrogen's clean. And again, I think it's good for like a cruise ship and maybe trucking, although I'm really on the fence about
this
that.
This is an unpopular opinion because I do love my Toyotas, my Land Cruisers and stuff. But, Akio, and this is true of Japanese and German and to a large part American industry. The auto industry, we talk a lot about the fun and the fast stuff. These are deadly serious industries they are existential for certain countries, Germany and Japan. They are literally jobs programs. And in the switch from internal combustion to EVs, I think Akio is quoted somewhere saying like 1 million jobs will go away.
Oh yeah,
not
Germany,
not jobs like people's jobs, like job types. Like the guy who makes the valves, the guy who makes the valve springs, the guy who cleans the cafeteria in which the valve springs are made.
Yeah,
like
Germany,
all these things just
I think 1/3 of jobs in Germany are automotive.
IG Metall they're not super psyched about that. That's the biggest union in Germany, in most of Europe for automotive workers. They're not super psyched about the transition. Yep. You think the Saudis aren't happy? The unions of auto manufacture of the workers, they're not super excited either.
The unions have been unhappy for years. I don't want to get started on my union diatribe about American manufacturers.
Yeah, but man, remember when that cotton gin showed up and
exactly, it's the same thing. Same thing with internal combustion versus horse. I get all
same
of that,
thing for AI and people in creative industries.
Oh yeah, I know. God, don't get me started on ChatGPT as a writer.
We got 2 more hours.
We got. I know. I know why you guys had me on. You had me on as like the Honda guy of like, what do I think about the state of tuning? The future of tuning in a alternate mobility world, the future of mobility as it affects tuning. The one thing I side more with Ed than Johnny. I believe, Johnny, you said once on this show that you don't think it's right that people are putting an LS swap in an old Land Cruiser, like a Jonathan Ward sort of thing, because you feel like the engineers have designed that engine to work with that car, and the ethos of hot rod and import tuning and everything is to put something different on. And when you talk about me being the old school guy who my oldest daughter wants an NA Miata because she loves the pop-up headlights and she's got to have a manual transmission.
Sure.
Like, God, I love you. The one thing that she said, I'm going to cry because I'm a girl dad, but she said, well, I got to do a K-swap. I'm like, you do not need a K-swap for a little 1.6 liter. She goes, I'm your daughter. You're the Honda guy. And I'm like, that just warmed my heart when she said that.
What breaks my heart is when V12s are removed from XJSs for an LS.
I get all that, but that was not a good
cruddy old 6-cylinder.
That was not a good V12. That XJS.
How dare you? What do you have against 72 head bolts?
So I will say that for me, the one thing that I see, and one thing that I am arguing, not to get back to shill my show, which is the only reason you guys had me on, which
not the only reason,
but I will say
not the only reason. We were like, we need some guests.
Can I tell you something? Before I saw the announcement on Instagram 2 days ago of your show, I had no idea you had a show.
Oh, okay,
that's how great communication is here. So I was like, oh, cool, let's have John on.
One of the things that we did was we want to do, what is the Sport Compact, the Super Street Garage version of Patina? Because everything we do is kind of a finished car. Right. So we got a 1970 510 wagon. And cool. My ultimate argument is I'm like, we need to EV swap that. I wanted to EV because I'm like, it's the ultimate, like it's a Jonathan Ward 49 Mercury derelict sort of vibe. I'm like, that's what we need to do. And they're like, it's too soon because they're worried about what the audience. Right. And this is where I'm on Team Ed, Project X. Huge fan of what the Project X was because that's what that car is. It's supposed to show different elements, which I know we don't want to get. I just lit up.
Now he just outed me.
I just outed Ed again now because you admitted it on this show actually too to say that. But so I will argue that I think that there is a future there, which I know, Johnny, you said you like a Lucid Air, you like a Model S, you like your Rivian, you know, but you don't like when a backyard tuner takes a Tesla motor and puts it in a Teslanda, the guy that does the Leaf with the Hayabusa motor.
I don't mind that. Okay, no, I don't mind any of that. I don't, like I said, I wrote an article once for MotorTrend Classic called "Swapping Rules," and it was just
there are no rules except never swap in a rotary. That's my only rule.
I was just like, if it's a cool engine and you just can't get it running, don't just drop a Chevy in there. Leave the Jag engine alone.
Yes. So I will argue
know
that,
what I
but the
mean?
one thing that I think for the future of tuning is definitely these shade tree mechanics that are doing this, the EV West of the world,
Rich rebuilds.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
and Rich Rebuilds, and
Yeah.
Jonathan he's one of my.
Jonathan Ward only
say
wants
this-
to do EVs. He
Oh
hates
yeah,
the fact he has to do
and I
gas
say this
engines.
as a card carrying member of the. I have
Oh,
for those
nice.
listening. This is one of
Let me
his
see
one
that.
of his
Yeah.
wallets.
Oh,
like it's
yeah.
alligator skin, and it's also reliably sourced too. It's a very
Yeah,
well done,
that's
very
nice.
nice piece. So I'm a huge fan of everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Such a renaissance man.
He's
So
amazing.
I
Yeah, yeah.
love what he's sort of even looking into it to say, we're not even there yet, and I get that, but I like that people are trying that. And for me, where I feel like it'll get to, when you guys talked about, you had Ben Schaefer on the show and everything, you're talking about Tesla tuning. Right now, they ran, I think it was Craig Coker was right, Randy wasn't driving, they drove, the overall record for time attack at Buttonwillow Raceway Park is 1 minute, 37 seconds and 3:08. Will All Young in a Civic of all things, a front-wheel drive Civic, so shout out to my Honda friends. And Craig went in the dark helmet, which is the
Helmet.
best name.
Which
also.
is that? Which is
What's
at
the matter,
Pikes Peak
Colonel
right now?
Sanders? Chicken, which is up at Pikes Peak right now with
Yeah.
Randy. And but he went 143. Like he's 6 seconds off the mark. You look at like Timo Bernard at Nürburgring ran that 919 Hybrid Evo to like a 519, which is mind blowing.
I talked to him. It was I was
Dude,
like,
the car moves so fast.
It
You
looked
watch him when he
fake,
ran
yeah.
at Spa, the way it goes through Eau Rouge. Oh my God!
I got it. It's real quick because I talked to Timo. I went and got a ride. Me and Reggie Watts got a ride in the Mission E. I'm sorry, the Mission R, the electric Porsche race car prototype. And Timo was driving us around, and I was like, "Dude, tell me about that lap." And he said it was really funny because they had done a lap, and they had some time left. And he's like, he's like, I think I can go faster. And he said he just did it, and it wasn't planned, and it was just the perfect time of day. And he said, but his adrenaline was so up, and it was such a short lap that he was like in full going to do a 24-hour, 4-hour stint type thing. That he's like, I had to be by myself for an hour. I got out of the car and just had to be in a room alone because I couldn't be near anybody. I was like vibrating so hard.
Decompress from
because they
that.
get their heart at like 180.
Yeah. But like, so he went 519. I
Yeah.
think the record AMG GT Black Series
640
is like a 633. Yeah,
641,
643 or something like that. And then like you look at a Tesla Model S, 725. It's like they're knocking on the doors.
Not
right
Randy, but Ben in the Unplugged car. It set I shouldn't say record, but it beat GT2 RS's time around Big Willow. Which is insane.
Accidentally
Accidentally,
during
which is-
testing.
which is
Yeah, yeah.
amazing to me. So when you see that, like I see that future's coming. And when you talk about, was it Rivian was the only one that's doing 4-wheel batteries right now?
For motors.
Four motors, right? So they're doing four.
For now, Mercedes, the electric G will have 4
But
motors.
if you think about that in terms of like a tuning or a performance standpoint, where you
That's
could do
game
torque
changer.
vectoring
Yep,
and
game
everything
changer.
else,
Game changer.
that's what I thought EVs would be. And also, Ed likes to talk about the skateboard platform. Huge fan of that because as a fan of front wheel drive, you could put anything on a front wheel drive from a Prius to an XB. All you have to do is stretch the wheelbase and everything, and you could play with so much. And I feel like there's so much potential there where you could put an old school patinaed hot rod on it. You could put like something, and then you could just play with it. Because right now you can't tune the batteries. You can't tune the motors. You can't do it. Just like what Ben is running into with Unplugged. They were like begging Tesla engineers to like
Yes,
change
we need
things.
a line of code.
Yeah, exactly.
Please,
So
please,
just
please.
this
Yeah,
one line
yeah.
of code to allow us to delete this. And they're unable to do that. So if you could do other things with it, I think that there's so many possibilities to that. The other thing that I will
And
say,
I would just say real quick, you don't the need to tune EVs isn't as much as it was with like an old, Civic,
it's
because
the performance is there
Yeah,
out of the box.
you know
but
what
if
I
you're
mean?
if you're
Like,
doing everything else
Yeah,
to it,
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
That's what bums me out. It's like Tesla. I get it. They're ruling the world. I hope Elon will let other people adopt his the Charger so we could have something universal. He has, but he has not. It's sort of like not quite unlocked for everyone yet,
Yeah,
which I think it's the direction.
coming,
that's the
but
next
yeah,
thing
yeah,
that needs
yeah,
to come.
yeah.
And I think the battery tech, standardized battery tech, could be something that could be a possibility.
It's-
But
like-
beyond
like
that,
we were
like
talking about,
all the
batteries are
chassis
so
tuning,
young
design,
right now. Yeah,
they
yeah,
are.
yeah.
I mean, you guys are talking about. I heard you guys talking about, and you guys are way more involved than I am. Like batteries in the doors and like moving the batteries on the structural
Well,
batteries
that's
and
what
all that.
the Porsche Mission
Mission-
X concept, which they showed, now skateboard. So like most EVs you've ever seen, you sit on top of a battery.
Exactly.
It runs the whole length of the car. The Mission R, the battery is actually where the engine would be.
Yep.
The Lotus, I can never get the name, but the $2.2 million electric
The
Lotus.
Avaya?
Amira?
No, the electric one, the Avija.
Yeah, the Avaya.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, is it pronounced
I think it's
Avaya?
Avaya. Yeah.
So it's a big
I actually got to go to
battery.
Galpin into the vault and like do a whole thing on that.
I saw it
was
at the
like,
factory.
yeah.
But like the battery,
Gorgeous.
It's a 93 kilowatt hour battery, which is about the size of a Model S battery, a little smaller. It's behind, so you're low. You're not sitting on the battery, and then the Mission X concept is going to be behind. So that's changing, and again, as battery tech gets better, they get smaller. They don't make as much heat. You don't have to worry about voltage spikes and then that Lotus is 2,000 horsepower. The Romance Navara is 2,000 horsepower. The Pinot
Too
Fino,
much. It's too much.
No.
Not even.
What about the Ford Supervan 4.2 that's going up Pikes Peak?
Yeah.
1,400 horsepower, 7 motors.
Yeah.
Romain Dumas driving it. And overall record at Pikes Peak.
So
the EVs
I
are like
drove-
the honey
I
badgers
drove,
of Pikes Peak. They don't care about the elevation.
Right.
They
Well,
go.
because the battery's hot.
The power degrades, but not as much as
just from battery heat. You
Exactly.
can be in space.
Exactly.
No, but I drove Von Gitten's drift.
Oh, the Mustang
thing.
Mach-E. Yeah,
with 7 motors,
yeah.
and it's totally wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a brave
So
new
it
world.
sounds like you
Yes.
are excited about them.
I am too. You know what? I know Johnny doesn't like he likes to avoid the drone. I can't get behind no sound. I think that there's something to gear whine to it or something that would excite me a little bit more because
I got to get you in that Porsche Mission R. It's
I'm
the
gonna-
loudest.
Oh my God.
I'm glad it's an explosion.
Okay, it's the loudest car you've ever heard. It's because it has a single speed transmission with
see,
straight cut gears.
that's what I
It's
love.
awful.
That's what I love.
It's
like
awful.
that's what. No.
EVs have their own noise, but
They
look,
do.
I know what you mean. I know. I totally like. You like if it was up to me, and this is why I'm not in charge of anything. I would get rid of all cars except for things with V12s. Because I don't want it. Like everything else sucks compared to a nice V12. Maybe a V10 every now and again. If it's a good enough V8, but I'd have to like inspect it. But that's why nothing's left up to me. Like it would be like the 5.2 liter twin turbo Aston Martin V12 is bare minimum. That's what the Corolla gets.
Well, that's the same with me when I did the Civic. The engine swap of choice is the modern era 2-liter K series that's currently in the it's a 2.3 now, but in the Civic Type R and everything else.
Yeah.
And that's the engine, that K series architect. It spins the other way from the B series, and the B series was the end all be all of Honda.
Sure.
But I said, I'm an old guy. I want to have that B16, so I took out the single cam D16 engine and I put in a dual cam B16. So I literally 1.6 liter to 1.6 liter, and it's all of like 180 horsepower at best, and I'm gonna ring it out and take it to 8,000 RPM and have fun with it.
And
it's the best slow car fast fun you can
and
have.
fully tuned, you're talking 180 horsepower.
Well, eventually I want to get these Toyota throttle bodies and build the bottom end, and they don't respond well to built bottom ends and sort of port and polish and everything, and maybe get 200 wheel horsepower out of it.
Okay,
Maybe,
so like
maybe.
240.
Yeah, maybe, and naturally aspirated. I'm a huge fan of natural.
Yeah?
Yeah, GT3 RS greater than
yeah.
911
Oh,
turbo.
yeah.
I love turbo sounds. I love the power that it generates, but to me, there's a purity about a naturally aspirated engine.
I can go either way because absolutely 100%. That said, I've been driving around that Toyota GR Corolla.
Oh man!
And it makes 100 horsepower per beer,
yeah.
half liter.
Yes.
It makes it's a 300 horsepower, and then it's
1.3 liter.
And so it's got it's a three cylinder, sounds totally bizarre.
Yep.
It's like this really bassy like, wah, 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 wah. And then it has the like most intense but quietest little blow off. Like if you have the windows down, it's just like. Psst, psst. I'm
Amazing.
Like, oh, it's so cool. So I like anything that's like racy. It's just it's got to be powerful.
Same.
Yeah.
I also like because I am who I am. No matter what, if it's Singer or Icon or whatever, I'm going to put a different set of wheels on it, and I'll find a way to ruin it and do some just through tuning.
So when when I get my
that's to me.
Toyota, I need to talk to you
Oh yeah,
about
for
some
sure.
5 spokes.
Well,
Okay? I need 5
for
spokes.
sure.
Okay.
There's so many different companies.
Oh,
out
yeah.
there. So I think that that's and that also extends to design too. Like I know you guys are huge fans of the Model S. Could not be more offended by that car because you had all due respect to Franz
where's
von
Franz?
Hohenhausen. I know all due respect to Franz.
Cashing checks right
He is,
now.
but I'm like it when it came out, it looks like an Apple store. It looks beautiful, futuristic, but it's very vanilla to me.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at like Audi RS e-tron GT, just
Gorgeous.
poops all
Oh,
over
it's
that.
So
Come on, Ed. Are you
you
kidding
look at-
me?
if
Ed
look
is
at it from-
desperately wrong here
No,
because
no, no.
that Audi is gorgeous.
Audi's
That's
good
a
looking,
gorgeous
but,
car.
but call me in
Gorgeous.
10 years because
You
It'll
think the
still be
Audi will look
gorgeous.
dated? I think
Yeah.
the Model S right now looks dated.
Oh,
you don't
no.
have to deal with the radiator. You could do so much with the
Who
front
cares
end.
about
Rear
dating?
three-quarter,
It's
you know?
literally gorgeous.
The rear
Yeah.
3/4 on the Model S
That's-
is what
that's
you
great.
like. Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
do like that.
Yeah,
you know?
the Audi,
Deep drop.
Audi copied that.
The
But that
C
said-
pillar to the arch to the haunch. Yeah.
But the Audi is gorgeous. If it just had double the battery, it'd be
All right,
perfect.
look, the one thing is clear.
Uh-oh.
So John is a font of knowledge, literally.
And we always say like
very, very enthusiastic.
we always say that like Southern California is the center of the car world.
It is.
And it's because of guys like John.
Right?
You
Did-
know, yeah. No, I'm tooting your horn.
Did,
now.
it,
No,
did, his, did his
seriously-
research. We need to have him back because man, he talks fast, and he has a lot more to say. But I'm getting death eyes from our.
I mean, this is the
world's
first time
longest.
that either of us in 50 episodes, that either of us has left the room
Well, yeah,
at the 2-hour mark because Ed had to
Sorry,
use
sorry,
the restroom.
sorry.
It's okay.
So it's great. But
But no, the show, Super Street
show.
Garage. It's on. Just go to MotorTrend, go to the site, go to the app, go to your cable channel, go to our video on demand service.
and then
watch
the
it.
free channels, like if you have Pluto, the stuff that comes
We're on Roku
pre-installed.
now.
If it's on your smart
Samsung TV,
yeah,
you can watch it.
it'll be, which is pretty cool because then you're in every house, which is
Yeah.
pretty neat.
And once the show runs its course, the first season, maybe we'll have John on to talk about how it went and see where he's at with his, EV love.
If I could get an EV swap and something. I would
Well, what we
definitely
should
help.
also do is we should, this is what would be great to get Freiburger, but like put you guys in some EVs and like send you on a road trip.
Oh my God, that
Make
would be
you
amazing.
charge your-
Sending
make you go
Freiburger
charge your
and
first time.
Naderi in a
Freiburger saying it should be an F body
In a
Camaro.
Chevy-
I'm
in a
saying it
Chevy
should
Bolt.
be yes.
That would be perfect.
Can I even tell this story? I can't tell this.
No, you can't.
I
Okay.
can't tell this
And we're
story.
out of time.
All right.
And we're out of time. Thank you so much, John Naderi, for your
Thank
time
you,
today
thank
and
you,
your
thank
insights.
you.